The Immortal Stranger. Starting as a traveling merchant, this video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Human Warmth. As for the temporary transformation of 5 immortal spiritual ki into Red Emperor's nourishing ki, it was just an attempt made by Zhao Chen on a whim. Although he had already known the root of Red Emperor's nourishing ki after many dual cultivations with Yan Hongxia, Zhao Chen was not very confident without the visualization diagram and corresponding mental method. He did not expect to succeed in one try. This shows that the so-called "5 Emperor's Sword Art" and "secret records of key movement in the 12-story Tower of Golden Tower and Jade Chamber are indeed of the same origin, and the latter has a higher quality of key cultivation, which is why it can simulate the properties of the former. Although the quality of the "Red Emperor's nourishing essence key" is inferior to the "5 Immortal's nourishing key, it is more suitable for fighting. It can both "nourish its own essence" and "eliminate the enemy's essence." Although at this stage it cannot turn the enemy into "vital energy" and "burn it directly with one sword like Yan Hongxia's innate sword energy does, it can also make the enemy's ki evaporate in flames and interfere with its movement. In a fight, it is indeed more useful than the "5 Immortal's nourishing ki." After all, the purpose of the latter is to "not fight and let the enemy kneel and lick themselves." As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen nodded with satisfaction. Then he stretched out his hand to pick up Yan Hongxia from the bed and put her in a large box that his master had prepared for him. In order to avoid being discovered, he had to inconvenience Sister Hongxia. Just after he finished doing this, Zhao Chen heard the whistle of the ship about to dock, and the servant Feng Gu also came in after knocking on the door and reported, "Master, the ship has docked. Master Zhenwu asked you to meet on the deck." He was listless, his whole body was listless, and his steps were very unsteady. It was obvious that he was a little seasick. Zhao Chen nodded slightly, pointed to the box containing Yan Hongxia and said, "Find a few people to lift this box, and be careful to handle it with care. It contains the treasures that I got in Jinjia County." If it were normal times, Feng Gu would definitely be curious about what made the young master so solemnly explain, but now he was in no mood to do so. He just wanted to get off the ship as soon as possible, so he hurriedly agreed. After giving Feng Gu the order, Zhao Chen left the cabin and walked onto the deck. On the surface, he seemed to no longer pay attention to the box. After all, if he cared too much, it would arouse suspicion. The city of Human County has tall and majestic walls, ancient and vast, and a large number of cargo ships and merchant ships are docked in the dock area outside the city wall. Some of them are ancient longitudinal sail styles, while others are already covered with a layer of steel. The huge steam chimneys constantly spew out white smoke with the fragrance of flowers and plants. The sound of the whistle, the horns of the coolies at the dock, and the shouts of various hawkers mixed together to form a lively and noisy scene. Standing on the deck, Zhao Chen looked far away and saw that the street between the dock and the city gate was extremely prosperous, with houses lined up and tourists weaving. The short peddler carrying a basket of pancakes. The hawker shouting to watch the shadow play. The entertainers who tell stories, sing operas, and break rocks with their chests. The pretty girl in a strange dress with ironed curly hair. The postman riding a bicycle with a monocle on his left eye. The western hostesses with open clothes and slit skirts to the thighs, blonde hair and blue eyes, or red hair and blue eyes. The old man who sells powerful pills with long hair, buns, Taoist robes, and immortal appearance. They interweave together to form a bizarre picture, making Zhao Chen feel as if he has returned to the temple fair at the beginning of the century in his previous life. Seeing that Zhao Chen's eyes seemed to stay on the hostesses who were soliciting customers for the tavern, Zhao Zhan, who was originally directing the fire gun team to move the goods, frowned and deliberately smiled and said, "Haha, are you shocked by those Western women? But they are not real foreign women. Most of their hair is dyed. It's just that the tavern lets them dress like this to solicit customers for the sake of novelty." Zhao Chen, if you just talk to them, you'll know that they may speak the great Zhao dialect better than you do. Hearing this, Zhao Chen came to his senses and knew that Uncle Zhen might have misunderstood, but he did not argue much and just asked casually, I heard that after the endless desert appeared 10,000 years ago, cutting off the connection between the East and the West, many Westerners were stranded in Human. Is it true? Zhao Chen, you are making things difficult for your Uncle Zhan. How would I know about things that happened 10,000 years ago? But even if it is true, after 10,000 years they would have already been integrated into our great Zha, right? Those fake foreign women are most likely the descendants of the people you mentioned. Well, I only know that there was originally a temple of the goddess of light built by Westerners on Lu Mountain west of Human City, but it has long been dilapidated, and now a group of beggars have settled there. While chatting with Uncle Zhan, the Binquan finally entered the port, set up the gangway, and began to unload. And Zhao Zhen also apologized, got off the boat directly, and greeted a middle-aged man with a fat body and a shiny bald head, and said with a smile, Brother Gong, long time no see, today we have to have a few drinks. As he said, he secretly stuffed a prepared envelope into the other's hand. When I saw the Binquan from a distance, I knew it was you, Brother Zhan. But forget about drinking, I still have things to do. Well, just tell me a number, and don't make things difficult for me. The middle-aged man surnamed Gong responded enthusiastically, after pinching the thickness of the envelope. It turned out to be the tax officer at the dock. Zhao Chen, who saw everything, nodded and began to seriously consider whether to let Yan Hongxia get him an official position. After all, this is a different time. He didn't agree at the beginning, because he was worried that Yan Hongxia would plot against him, but now, Sister Hongxia is already one of his own. Just as Zhao Chen was thinking, several horses were galloping in the distance, with unparalleled momentum. When they saw the tax officer surnamed Gong, they didn't slow down to avoid him. Get out of my way. A woman on the horse waved a whip and whipped him. It was Zhao Zhen who pulled the tax officer surnamed Gong back, and he narrowly avoided the whip. It was not until those knights galloped past that the tax officer surnamed Gong cursed. Bah. The people of the Che family are getting more and more domineering. Do they think they can do whatever they want just by climbing up to the Li family? Sooner or later, they will offend people who should not be offended. So it's the Che family. Zhao Zhen suddenly realized that the other party's daughter had married the grandson of the current patriarch of the Li family a year ago. Of course, the fundamental reason why they are so domineering is that the Che family produced a cultivator in the realm of magic 3 years ago, that is, 10,000 families Buddha Che Yugang, who ranked 13th on the human outstanding people list. Zhao Chen on the deck naturally saw this scene, and because of his high position, he also saw those knights rushing all the way, heading straight for a sailboat on the number 1 pier, and surrounded the people who got off the ship. Chapter 52. The divine wind from beyond the territory blows the water. In front of the number 1 pier in the dock area, a dozen Che family knights in bright clothes and riding horses surrounded the 4 people who came down from the old sailing ship, completely ignoring the pointing and talking of others around them, and looked at everyone like ants. The 4 people surrounded were 3 men and 1 woman, one of whom was not very old and looked only 15 or 16 years old. They had an ethereal and pure temperament, which made people easily want to protect them. At this time, the 2 of them were looking at the knights around them with tears in their eyes, and their bodies could not help but tremble. In front of them, there were 2 big men in their 40s holding muskets, protecting the boys and girls behind them. The leader of the knights was a young woman with vigor. She jumped off her horse directly, pointed at the 2 middle-aged men with a whip and said, Wang Zhen, Wang Lai, how dare you steal my family's treasures? Do you think you can escape to the county town? Bah. You are so good at turning the tables. It was obviously your Che family who used despicable means to trick my nephew and niece into your manor. If we hadn't discovered it early, Xiaojin and Xiaoqin would have been killed by Che Yugang. The man named Wang Zhen spat. They voluntarily converted to my uncle. How can it be called cheating? What's more, my eldest uncle Wan Jia Shengfo is a well-known chivalrous man. It is their blessing that the 2 of them can serve my uncle. When the heroic woman talked about her uncle, her tone unconsciously carried a sense of reverence. Hearing her words, another man, Wang Lai, sneered, "Oh, do you think we don't know what the phrase 6 true words are? Happy to go down to the court and serving Yu Gang in the 8 treasures tower in Che Yu Gang's name means? Even cultivators at the true key realm will lose themselves under his true word spell, not to mention us, who are just ordinary nephews and nieces. The reason they are able to wake up now is probably because something went wrong with Che Yu Gang's practice, right?" The leading woman's eyebrows immediately turned upside down when she heard the words. She was obviously furious because her uncle, who was like a god in her mind, was insulted. However, although Wang Zhen and Wang Lai in front of them had ordinary inheritances, they had already opened their eyes and ears. With the fire guns in their hands, although they had more people on their side, it was really difficult to take down the opponent for a while. Of course, the more important thing is that bullets have no eyes. It's okay for a cultivator like her who has achieved success in true key and opened acupoints. If those guys under her who haven't even opened their eyes hurt Zhao Jin and Zhao Qin, she won't be able to explain to her uncle. In addition, this is a county city after all. Even if it's just a dock outside the city, if there is a real exchange of fire, I'm afraid it will be investigated by the Daoist office. And some people in the Daoist office, especially Yan Hongxia, have a very bad relationship with their own family, and they may take the opportunity to make trouble. So the scene was deadlocked for a while. But the woman was not in a hurry, because her uncle was also on the way. On the Bingquin, Zhao Chen frowned as he watched this scene from afar. Although he could not hear what the two sides said, he guessed the purpose of the Che family from the relevant introduction on the human Renji list. The Renji list clearly stated that the main practice of Che Yu Gang was Joizen. Perhaps people in this world do not know what Joizen is, because Buddhism has been declining for a long time. But how could Zhao Chen, who has read many online articles, not know? The pair of siblings with unique temperaments are probably being targeted by the Che family. He actually wanted to intervene, and it was not troublesome. As long as Wang Daoyi was summoned, the problem could be solved in 1 or 2 seconds at most. But there are many disadvantages to doing so. First, the places where Wang Daoyi appeared several times overlap too much with his own trajectory. Although no one has noticed it so far, it is hard to guarantee that no one will find clues in the future. Second, the siblings and their family were protected by strange supernatural powers, which might not be a problem for a while, but once Wang Daoyi's identity caused a big incident, they would inevitably be implicated. And Wang Daoyi is in my hands. The chances of him causing trouble in the future are definitely not small. Finally, and most importantly, as a traveling merchant, I should not do anything without profit. It's a shame to do such a chivalrous and righteous thing and make others famous. However, just as Zhao Chen was hesitating and struggling in his heart, he suddenly felt some movement in the Dairi crossing chat, so while pretending to continue to pay attention to the number 1 pier, he outlined the shadow of the Jiu Yao Jinzang in his mind. In the magnificent palace where most of the space was shrouded by fog, Zhao Chen, who appeared on the 6th dragon throne, cast his eyes on the desk in front of him, and finally stopped at the bronze mirror with the outer compass constantly rotating. That was the 8 diagrams bright light mirror he brought back from the mirror village last time. At this moment, the mirror was flashing a dazzling light, indicating that the missing parts of the crossing cha had entered the 10-kilometer range centered on Zhao Chen, and were still approaching. But if you want to determine the specific location of the parts, you need to pay star coins depending on the situation, and this time, only 100. Zhao Chen thought for a moment, and chose to spend money to calculate. Soon, as the balance was successfully deducted, a figure appeared in the bronze mirror. This person had a face like white jade, ears hanging down to the shoulders, neutral facial features, thick lips and lustful appearance. He was wearing a set of exquisite tight-fitting purple clothes, showing off his slender figure. His hands were slender and white like a woman, casually placed in front of him, and the purple gold ring on his middle finger was shining. At this time, this person was standing on a flying white lotus platform, showing his carefree look. Zhao Chen's eyes were focused on the other part, his middle finger. If he was not mistaken, it was one of the missing parts of the big sun star chariot, the purple light ring. This person standing on the lotus platform is the so-called 10,000 families living Buddha Che Yu Gang, right? Although the portrait on the human Ringia list is a bit distorted, his earlobe features are too obvious, it should be correct. TSK, since he's wearing the "purple light ring, then I have a good reason to "do justice" thinking this in his mind. Zhao Chen glanced at his balance, and then without hesitation, exchanged the Wang Dao Yi again. Beside peer number 1, a dozen knights and the 2 men who were protecting the boys and girls were still confronting each other, and no one dared to fire the first shot. But at this moment, the heroic woman in the lead flashed with joy on her face, pointing to a lotus platform approaching rapidly on the horizon, and said with a smile, "My uncle is here, Wang Zhen, Wang Lai, why don't you surrender quickly? My uncle is merciful, and may be able to forgive your sins." Hearing this, Wang Zhen and Wang Lai also discovered the figure that looked like a devil in their eyes. They felt regretful and desperate. They regretted that they had just looked ahead and behind, and ended up waiting for a strong enemy. They despaired that the enemy was too powerful for them to deal with, and Xiaojin and Xiaoqin might fall into the hands of the enemy. But the next moment, they looked at each other, and saw the determination in each other's eyes. "Even if we die, we must send Xiaoqin and Xiaojin to the county city before Che Yugang arrives. Once we enter the city, there is still a glimmer of hope." Just as they were about to pull the trigger and prepare to fight to the death, a strong wind suddenly rose from the nearby water. The divine wind from outside the domain blows the water to stand, and the flying rain from human comes over the river. Chapter 53 Success. The divine wind from outside the domain blows the water to a standstill, and the flying rain from human crosses the river, along with the formation of a water tornado that has never appeared in the western regions. A hurricane like a natural disaster also hits Che Yugang, who is standing on the lotus platform at a very fast speed. This is exactly Wang Dao Yi's 6th grade magical power transformation divine wind escape. Magic power. Che Yugang, who was originally leisurely on his way and was still thinking about what style he should use when he appeared later, suddenly widened his eyes, and his casual posture disappeared. As a cultivator with the 4th level of magic power, he knows the meaning of magic power too well. That is the pinnacle that ordinary people can reach, and it has initially touched the existence of the fur of the power of immortals. Unbelievable. Breaking the rules is the magic power. Such power is simply not something that ordinary magic power and gangsha cultivators can resist. No matter how exquisite your magic is, it will collapse in front of the magic power, unless you have a support at the same level as the magic power. And Che Yugang just has such a support. Seeing the divine wind approaching, he fixed his eyes, raised his middle finger, and let the purple light ring shine brightly. A white-skinned and beautiful woman's phantom appeared around him. This woman's temperament was pure, without the slightest charm, but she could arouse the deepest desires in people's hearts, making people want to conquer and ravage. At the same time, he swung his other arm fiercely, releasing the 7 natal instruments: the treasure bottle, the treasure cover, the double fish, the right-handed conch, the auspicious knot, the victory tower, and the prayer wheel. Together with the lotus platform under his feet, they constructed a tower with shining precious light. The so-called natal instruments are different from ordinary instruments. Ordinary magic tools are either the carriers of magical powers and spells, such as Wang Dao's his wine-slashing sword and Yan Hongxia's golden hairpin, or after a cultivator obtains a powerful magic that conflicts with his main cultivation method and cannot be cultivated into a lifelong magic, he is unwilling to give it up, so he uses it as a magic tool, such as the Changuang ribbon. But the lifelong magic tool is essentially the lifelong magic of the mana and gangsha cultivators, a kind of artifact type magic. The most typical of this kind of magic is the flying sword of the sword cultivator. For example, the Li family cultivators still need the assistance of magic tools to cultivate the sword energy magic in the mana and gangsha stages, but once they achieve the 5 emperors true sword magical power, they can use it to condense a real magical flying sword. Back to the point, the reason why Che Yugang was ranked 13th on the human outstanding list within only 2 or 3 years of advancing his mana is because he reached the 4th level as soon as he entered the mana realm and cultivated these 8 lifelong magic tools within a few months. However, he had never demonstrated his ability to combine the 8 treasures into a tower before. Outsiders had always thought that the phrase Shi Yugang in the 8 treasures tower in his title was the 8 treasures tower in his mana. However, at this moment, the female phantom summoned by Che Yugang with the purple light ring just raised her hand lightly, integrated the 8 treasures together, and used the treasure light to build a tower to protect Che Yugang. The next moment, the strong wind swept across, blowing the tower made of treasure light constantly shaking, and the surface was covered with spider-like cracks. But it finally held up. Zhao Chen, who was watching the battle, was also deeply surprised. It was the first time he saw the magic power return in vain on the cultivators below the magic power. Is this the power of the purple light ring? Who is that female phantom? The temperament is somewhat familiar. However, Che Yugang is only a mana cultivator after all. Even if he has a treasure and barely has the power to resist the magic power, he will not be a real opponent of the magic power. Just as Zhao Chen thought of this, the tower composed of precious light suddenly collapsed without any warning, and the female phantom on Che Yugang's body also disappeared, making his face lose all color and trembling all over. After breaking the defense of the precious light, the whirlwind did not stop at all and rushed straight to Che Yugang, intending to completely devour him. But at this time, a sword light that seemed to be condensed by stars flew from a distance. It seemed slow, but it was the first to strike, and slashed at the whirlwind transformed by Wang Daoyi, as if to force him back. Who would have thought that Wang Daoyi, who had the big sun star afterlock his blood, had no intention of dodging at all, and directly covered Che Yugang with a look of surprise on his face. But Wang Daoyi was hit by a magical sword, and the whirlwind he transformed into was hit a little off. In addition, Che Yugang tried desperately to save himself, and finally the whirlwind only had time to tear off his arm wearing the ring, and he had to retreat. Firstly, the owner of the sword light was approaching, and Zhao Chen's star coins could not support a battle of magical powers. Secondly, the grade of the sword light magical power was obviously higher than the transformation divine wind escape, and it would be difficult to keep the purple light ring if he didn't leave. Regretfully glancing at Che Yugang who fell into the river after losing his arm, Zhao Chen ordered Wang Daoyi to roll up the ring and escape at a very fast speed, disappearing at the edge of the sky. Just 2 seconds later, a middle-aged man with elegant temperament and handsome appearance appeared above the dock. He looked in the direction where Wang Daoyi flew away and sighed, "Too fast, can't catch up." At this time, the river water was churning again, and a woman who looked only 18 or 19 years old came over on the waves, carrying Che Yugang, who had lost his arm and was in a coma. Her face was handsome and delicate, her eyebrows and eyes were picturesque, and she was heroic. The equally heroic woman of the Che family on the dock suddenly lost her color against her. Soon, the woman was lifted into the air by the sudden rise of water mist. Her expression was calm, and her long black hair fluttered in the wind. She came straight to the middle-aged man standing in the air and stopped. "Fairy Zeng, you are here too." The middle-aged man nodded to her, and then took Che Yugang. This person is a relative of his Li family after all, and it is not right for an outsider to lift him up like this. I sensed the aura of a divine wind type of magical power erupting, so I naturally came to take a look. The young woman called Fairy Zeng said in a cold tone, as if she had known her speaking style for a long time. The middle-aged man did not care and asked, "Fairy, do you know the way of this strange magical power?" Fairy Zeng nodded gently and replied, "Divine wind type magical power is quite popular in Yingzhou Island. Although the highest level is only 5th grade, because the related Ganqi and evil spirits are easy to collect in the East China Sea, it is the first choice of many cultivators. The person just used the 6th grade magical power transformation divine wind escape, which integrates attack, defense, travel, and trapping the enemy. It is considered a very good magical power, and it is widely circulated in the East China Sea. Many sects and families have included it." She said the latter part in a rather formal way, as if she was reciting information. "Fairy is from Yingzhou. I think you will not make a mistake. So, another foreign magical power has come to Ganzhou? And he just took my sword and survived, so he must have at least a 4th grade protective magical power. Unfortunately, I don't have much experience, and didn't recognize it. Recently, the border of the western region has been really turbulent. I always feel that something big is going to happen." Chapter 54 Zeng Family. After sighing, the handsome middle-aged man looked at the cold woman again and asked, I wonder if the person the fairy is looking for has been found? No. The woman surnamed Zheng shook her head gently, but her expression did not show disappointment. Who is the fairy looking for? Do you need the help of my Li family? The middle-aged man took out a pill and fed it to Che Yugang while speaking and helped him stop bleeding. A broken arm is not a serious injury for a mana cultivator. There are many spells that can regenerate broken limbs. If it doesn't work, you can go to the Sima family in Liang's How to buy the Ganlu Baoquin. Just 1 cup can make the arm recover as before. Although this spring water is unique to the Sima family, it is sold publicly, but the price is not cheap. So Che Yugang has not woken up yet, not because of the broken arm, but because of the backlash after using the purple light ring to borrow the power of the pure woman's phantom. There is no need, unless Senior Xianjian takes action personally, others will die if they meet him. The woman surnamed Zheng shook her head again. Her tone was calm, as if she was stating a fact, without any consideration for the middle-aged man's feelings. However, the Li family's magical power cultivator was very well-mannered and did not get angry because of the other party's contempt. He just frowned and said, is that person a 2nd grade or even a 1st grade magical power? Yes. The woman surnamed Zheng nodded slightly. So that's the case. I wish the fairy can find that person as soon as possible. The middle-aged man stopped asking after getting a positive answer. After all, their Li family's clown magical power 5 Emperor's true sword was just barely squeezed into the 3rd grade, and there were only 2 people in the Li family who had mastered the clan magical power. The rest of the middle and lower grade magical powers, in the eyes of the cultivators who had mastered the upper grade magical powers, were just stronger gangsha realms that could be easily destroyed. After the 2 of them had a brief conversation, the figure of the woman surnamed Zheng suddenly became transparent and then turned into a pile of bubbles. The bubbles spread and flew away, disappearing in an instant. The Zheng family is worthy of being one of the 12 great families of Daxia. This magical power that turns into bubbles and travels through the void is at least of the 3rd rank. The middle-aged man sighed, then flew down on his sword and landed beside the number 1 peer of the peer. He handed Che Yugang to the Che family knights and ordered in a tone that could not be refuted, take your family master back to heal his wounds. Remember the lesson this time. If you don't restrain yourself in the future, I'm afraid you will cause greater trouble. You are not always lucky enough to escape from the hands of the magical monks. Hearing this, the woman who was the leader of the Che family knights hurriedly knelt on the ground and said in fear, I will obey the orders of the deacon. Although the middle-aged man had no official status, he was the magical deacon stationed in Newman County by the Li family. His actual status was actually much higher than that of the county magistrate. Leave. The middle-aged man waved his wide sleeves and then turned to the 2 refining monks Wang Zhen and Wang Lai, as well as the siblings Zhao Jin and Zhao Qin who were protected behind them. Seeing this, the Che family woman who wanted to kidnap the siblings did not dare to do it again. She bowed and then hurriedly led the people away in embarrassment. The supernatural power steward of the Li family swept his eyes over the faces of the siblings and then returned to the 2 refining monks and said carefully, your name is Wang Zhen, Wang Lai? Yes, steward. Wang Zhen and Wang Lai hurriedly bowed and thanked each other for saving their lives. No need to be so clever and no need to thank me. You should thank the supernatural power who just cut off Che Yugang's arm. The middle-aged steward shook his head and asked directly, your surname is Wang, have you ever heard of the name Wang Daoye? He possessed the 5th grade supernatural power 6 Yao Shenjipan and was good at divination. Just after slashing the strange supernatural power with a sword, he established a connection with it and barely figured out the man's name and age. Unfortunately, his origin and current specific location were completely unpredictable. Although the strange supernatural power was likely to be targeting the treasure of Cheyu Palace, it is not ruled out that it was deliberately done to cover up the truth. The real purpose was to rescue the 4 people in front of him. Especially since the treasure can only condense a pseudo-supernatural power, it is not very helpful for real supernatural power cultivators. Wang Daoye. Who is that? Wang Zhen and Wang Lai both showed confusion in their eyes. Seeing that they really didn't know, the middle-aged deacon stopped talking to the two refining orifices and disappeared with a flash of sword light. It was not until the several supernatural power cultivators who appeared in succession all left that the people in the dock area exhaled a breath of turbid air. Wang Zhen and Wang Lai were the first to come to their senses. They didn't dare to delay any longer. They took their nieces and nephews and ran to Human County. Who knows if the Che family will come back. Even without the magical power of Che Yugang, the opponent's power was not something they could resist. It was the right thing to do to enter the city as soon as possible and seek shelter from the enemies of the Che family. When everything returned to normal, the fat tax officer named Gong, who had a shiny bald head, gloated beside the pier where the Bingquan was located. It's time. Finally, someone has dealt with the Che family. After that, he looked at Zhao Chen and said enthusiastically, we have to have a good drink today. Brother Zan, come with me. We won't go home until we are drunk. Zhao Chen had no choice but to agree. After all, this was his first suggestion. At this time, Zhao Chen, who was standing on the deck, cursed in his heart. After spending so many star coins, one day I couldn't bring the accessories back directly. I have to touch it myself. Now the problem is serious. After the commotion in the dock area, how dare I let Wang Dai come to me with things? Wouldn't that be caught by the Li family's magical power? The rubbish star chariot has so many flaws. In desperation, Zhao Chen had to order Wang Dai to hide the purple light ring in a secret cave in a desert hundreds of miles away, and then recalled it. He could only wait a few days to have time, or go to Dunhuang to do business, and then touch it in person. After a slight sigh, Zhao Chen was about to check the box containing Yanhangsha to avoid any accidents, but he found that Master Huang Xianjun, who was not far away, was staring at the air, slightly dazed. Master, what's wrong? Zhao Chen asked curiously. Master Huang came back to his senses after hearing this, shook his head and said, nothing. I just remembered an old friend who once fought side by side with me after seeing the transformation Divine Wind escape. I didn't expect to meet the Sea Divine Wind again in this Ganzhou desert. Master recognized the transformation Divine Wind escape. Wait. Fight side by side? Fight side by side with a supernatural power, and Master was also a supernatural power cultivator? No wonder he seemed to know a little bit about everything. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. Underworld Rules and Collusion Between Officials and Businessmen. Zhao Chen wanted to ask a few more questions, but he saw that his master was not interested at all. He changed his usual showy style and had no interest in talking about these things. Maybe something happened to his friend, or maybe he was sad that he could no longer fight side by side with him. No matter which one it was, it would be like exposing his scars. As his mind turned, Zhao Chen considerately changed the subject and said, Master, the one who just saved Che Yugang must be Li Fuan, the Blue Lotus Sword who ranked first on the human outstanding list, right? This is also the only cultivator with supernatural powers on the human outstanding list. It's not that Li Fuan is the only supernatural power in the huge human county, but that he is the only one under the age of 60 with supernatural powers. Huang Xianjun also realized that he had lost his composure in front of his apprentice, so he stroked his beard to adjust his mood and nodded. The purple sword mixed with red essence, the red light spit out green lotus. It's a pity that the 3-foot sword turned into floating smoke. This Li family supernatural power did not practice the 5 emperors paying homage to the truth, but wanted to combine the fundamental practice of the Li family before obtaining the 5 emperors paying homage to the truth great supernatural power, the Green Lotus Sword Song, and on the basis of the Red Emperor nourishing Yuan Sword Key, he walked out a new supernatural path on his own. Unfortunately, he succeeded, but also failed. Why? Zhao Chen asked curiously. The sword that the other party just slashed at Wang Dai contained the killing intention of Taibei Star. Although he did not use all his strength, Zhao Chen felt that if there was no Xingcha to lock Wang Dai's blood, he would definitely not be able to take it. That is to say, he successfully pieced together a 4th grade magical power, the Blue Lotus floating smoke sword, but it is not better than the original 4th grade magical power of the Li family, the Blue Lotus sword, and the training conditions are extremely harsh. So far, no one else has succeeded except him. Huang Xianjun explained with a smile, but even so, this kind of person who can walk a new path on his own is also a genius. No wonder there is a couplet in his poem Apathy that the 3-foot sword foolishly turned into floating smoke. I guess this senior is self-deprecating. At this time, the 2 caravan members had already lifted the box containing Yan Hongxia and began to disembark. While Zhao Chen's eyes were fixed on their movements, he casually asked, "What about the other female magic power?" "I don't know, maybe it's from outside. Judging from her posture, it's likely that she is a disciple of a family or a sect who is traveling and training." Huang Xianjun knew what his apprentice was paying attention to, so while talking, he pulled him to follow the 2 caravan members who were carrying the box. "When I was in Bingquan town before, I heard that a noble female knight came to Human County City and was received by the steward of the Li family," Zhao Chen said thoughtfully. "This was heard from the little servant Feng Quan the day of the time travel. The master and the apprentice got off the boat while chatting, and then each led a group of men through the bustling street from the pier to the city gate, and entered the city. There was no scene of the gatekeepers taking bribes as in ordinary stories." Zhao Chen was still sighing about the clean government of Human County when he suddenly glanced at the fire gun team behind him, all of whom were equipped with guns, and then he suddenly realized. After entering the city, the fire gun team and the martial arts school disciples escorted the goods straight to the west of the city, and finally stopped at the entrance of an alley called Chenjing Lane, and entered a large courtyard at the end of it. This is one of the properties of the Zhao family in the county city. Now it is regarded as an investment in the joint development of the trade route by the 2 families, for the Golden Art Martial Arts School to settle down. As the Homiawana, Zhao Chen first chose an independent courtyard as his residence, and then commanded the caravan members to carry the box containing Yan Hongxia into his bedroom. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. But before he could transfer Sister Hongxia to the bed, the servant Feng Quan came over to report, "Master, shopkeeper Lin is here to meet you and Master Huang." Shopkeeper Lin's name is Lin Ruxiang, another assistant arranged by his cheap father, who was previously sent to the county city to be a front station. "Got it." Zhao Chen nodded slightly, locked the box again, and went to the front hall with Feng Quan. At this time, in addition to the owner Huang Xianjun and senior brother Feng Kang, there was also a woman who looked to be in her 30s in the front hall. The woman had her hair tied up, like macup, and was wearing a chest-length skirt and a small-sleeved jacket, highlighting the capable and mature ancient business style. However, her eyebrows were too sharp, giving people a sense of very powerful. This is the shopkeeper Lin Ruxiang, who was hired by the original owner's mother to help her manage the dowry business. Zhao Chen first simply bowed to her and called her Auntie Lin, then seemed to sense that the atmosphere in the hall was not right and asked, "What happened?" "Something did happen, and we are listening to the reason from shopkeeper Lin. Chenna, you should come and listen too." Huang Xianjun did not look very nervous and just nodded. Senior brother Feng said angrily, "It's about the Dunhuang trade route. We may have been tricked by the Chen family." "What exactly happened?" Zhao Chen asked in a serious tone. "There are several escort agencies and martial arts schools that have set their eyes on this trade route and want to compete for it according to the rules of the rivers and lakes, and have invited the Human Chamber of Commerce to be a witness. I'm afraid the Chen family gave it to us because they were unable to keep this trade route." Shopkeeper Lin was quite helpless when she said this. Although she was good at dancing with long sleeves, she could do nothing about Jianghu affairs, which was why the Zhao family needed to cooperate with the Golden Art Martial Arts School. The so-called Jianghu rules actually rely on martial arts competitions to compete for the ownership of interests, but the losing party is not without any protection. At least they will get a considerable amount of compensation. Of course, Zhao Chen and others can also ignore this rule, but accordingly, doing business in Human in the future will be subject to many invisible constraints. After listening to shopkeeper Lin's explanation, Zhao Chen frowned, looked at his master and said, "Do you think we should accept this challenge?" "Of course we should accept it." Huang Xianjun stroked his beard and smiled, and then said, even the Chen family can keep that trade route for many years, which shows that there is no strong force competing for it. My old bones should be able to handle it. Moreover, I guess those forces will apply to ban the use of firearms in the competition. Why? Before Zhao Chen asked, senior brother Feng on the side asked in surprise. Since they challenged us at this time, they must have inquired about the current situation of our Golden Art Martial Arts School. Using fire guns, wouldn't it narrow the gap with us? Master Huang said with a smile. Yes, they don't know that I can successfully build my foundation and cultivate true ki in 2 or 3 days, and they don't know that junior brother Zhao has opened up the 12 meridians a few days ago. Senior brother Feng's eyes lit up, and then he clasped his fists and said, if there is anything, I will do my best. Master, this time I apply to fight for you. Zhao Chen was also eager to try. After all, since he reached the true ki realm, he had never fought with anyone seriously, and the competition that banged fire guns was not too dangerous, so it was just right. And even if he lost, it didn't matter. After Sister Xingcha woke up, at most, those guys who followed the rules of the rivers and lakes would know what official business collusion meant. Chapter 56 The Fight Behind the Scenes. However, out of caution, Zhao Chen asked the shopkeeper Lin, Aunt Lin, which martial arts schools or escort agencies are interested in the trade route we have. Lin Ruxiang was obviously well prepared. He took out 2 documents and handed one to Master Huang and one to Zhao Chen. He said at the same time, there are mainly 3, the San Escort Agency, the Black Cloud Martial Arts School and the Green Snake Martial Arts School. Among them, Shifelian, the owner of the Green Snake Martial Arts School, has the highest skill. He has already opened his iron mouth orifices, and his true energy has penetrated the 12 meridians. Although the green snake leg technique he masters has average potential, it is powerful and also has physical skills. Once they have firearms in hand, they are extremely difficult to deal with. However, as Hall Master Huang said, the martial arts of the San Escort Agency and the Black Cloud Martial Arts School are far behind the green snake leg technique in terms of body movements, and there are no warriors who have opened the 4 orifices, so the gunfighting technique is not advantageous, so they have united and demanded a ban on the use of firearms in this competition for the trade route. Well, Song San, the chief escort of the San Escort Agency, is good at the 3 Emperor's Cannon Fist, and its inheritance is not weak, but Song Escort himself has only opened his eye orifices, and his true energy has only penetrated 6 of the 12 meridians. As for Hall Master Emma of the Black Cloud Martial Arts School, she has actually reached an agreement with me. If we can withstand the pressure, she will withdraw voluntarily, but if we lose. At this point, Lin Ruxiang looked at Hall Master Huang and said very frankly, then she hopes that we can fully assist her in taking over the trade route, and then she will share the benefits brought by the trade route with us. It is obvious that this shrewd shopkeeper Lin has already found a buyer. After all, there is no essential difference for the Zhao family, whether cooperating with the Golden Art Martial Arts School or the Black Cloud Martial Arts School. Huang Xianjun was not dissatisfied with this. He smiled and shook his head and said, it seems that I have a good relationship with snakes recently. First there was the Sand Snake Gang, and now there is a Green Snake Martial Arts School. As he said, he threw the information to his 3rd apprentice Feng Kang, and smiled. Take a closer look, and see which one you think you can deal with. In addition to the gym owner, the information also includes records of relatively powerful disciples and escorts in these 3 martial arts gyms and escort agencies, but none of them practiced opening acupoints. After all, it is extremely difficult to practice related acupoints before the true ki is perfect. It is difficult to succeed without the assistance of external objects such as elixirs. On the other hand, Zhao Chen felt a trance while looking through the information. After all, compared with Yan Hongxia, Che Yugang, Li Fuan and other masters and grandmasters in the realm of mana and even supernatural powers that he had come into contact with, the people in this information were too weak. But this is the opponent I should deal with at my current level. With Wang Daoi's escort, I almost forgot how much I weighed. Thinking of this in his heart, Zhao Chen glanced at his master Huang Xianjun again, and continued to ponder. No wonder the master is not nervous at all. As a former supernatural power grandmaster, even if his manner was abolished, when he looked at these people, he just thought they were just children fighting, right? But we can't think too highly of the master. After all, this old man is now overambitious, and has lost to a yellow shirt gunner. When Zhao Chen was complaining, senior brother Feng had already closed the information. After thinking carefully, he said confidently, except for the 3 hall owners and escort leaders who practiced the acupoints, I should be able to deal with the rest. After all, he practiced the inner door skills of the Yuan sect, which is of the same level as the prestigious Li family. Once he achieves true ki, he can at least connect 4 of the 12 meridians. The quality of true ki is far superior to ordinary inheritance, so he naturally has a lot of confidence. Master Huang did not comment. He turned his head and looked at Zhao Chen again and asked with a smile, "Chenna, what about you?" Because of the shared secret, the relationship between the master and the disciple has become much closer, so Master Huang has a deeper understanding of Zhao Chen's personality. He knows that, although this disciple seems calm, he is the kind of person who is unwilling to be ordinary in his bones, and he will definitely not miss this open competition. But this is normal. Young people, who doesn't want to become famous? Moreover, this disciple did not know what benefits he had gained from the girl Hangsha. The quality of his true energy is very high, and his soul is also extremely powerful. It's just that he lacks experience in fighting. Otherwise, against those warriors who have only opened 2 or 4 orifices, the outcome is really uncertain. When Master Huang was thinking about it, Zhao Chen answered with certainty, Master Shi, Master Remo, and Chief Escort Song can all be handed over to me. Master, you just need to be the last one to hold the fort. As soon as he said this, even senior brother Feng, who knew that his true energy had penetrated the 12 meridians, couldn't help but look sideways, not to mention that his impression of Zhao Chen was still that of Lin Ruxiang, who could only write and draw. Although she had heard that the second son of the old master was a cultivator, her rosy lips opened and closed a few times, and then she said worriedly, Zhao Chen, don't show off. How many days have you been practicing? It's been a week at most. Zhao Chen complained in his heart, but on the surface he smiled and comforted, Aunt Lin, don't worry. I know my limits. His tone was gentle and his words were simple, but for some reason, Lin Ruxiang, who was still worried, was easily persuaded, and chose to believe him. Master Huang glanced at his apprentice, then nodded to Lin Ruxiang and said, in that case, please trouble shopkeeper Lin to convey to the Human Chamber of Commerce that we, the Golden Art Martial Arts Hall, have accepted this competition. But since they set the rules, I have to set the time. In the San Escort Agency in the east of the city, the chief escort Song San was demonstrating his own boxing skills to his escorts while teaching. The boxing theory of the 3 emperors cannon fist contains the creation of yin and yang, the way of combining hardness and softness, and the learning of attack, defense, advance and retreat. Remember, you must take ki as the main thing and force as the priority. Ki is the king and force is the minister, and the ministers can only win when they match. While speaking, he punched like a punch, and fired like a cannon. With the excitement of true ki, he directly penetrated 3 layers of wooden boards as thick as fingers with just one punch. Good. The owner of the agency is invincible with his magic fist. The escorts cheered when they saw this. Invincible with magic fist? This is not as powerful as a large caliber revolver musket. Don't learn to flatter others. Song San finished his training and stood up. After scolding a few words, he continued to explain the various mysteries of the 3 emperors cannon fist. It was not until it was completely dark that the show finally ended. Song San, who had just returned to his room, had not had time to drink a sip of water when he saw his nephew running in. The other party took a few breaths before bowing respectfully and said, Uncle, Jinbyo Martial Arts School has accepted the challenge of the competition and set the date for 7 days later. 7 days later. Song San nodded thoughtfully after hearing this, and then ordered, go and tell Che, the manager of the Human Chamber of Commerce, that I have forced Jinbyo Martial Arts School to agree to the competition according to his request. He should give us what he promised. Hey, I heard that Che Yugang was severely injured today. I regret getting involved in the fight between the Che and Yan families. Chapter 57 Outside the Pass. In the main hall of the Black Cloud Martial Arts School, a woman in a white training suit was sipping tea while flipping through a letter in her hand. The woman looked to be about 25 or 26 years old, with a plump figure and a fit body. She was the owner of the martial arts school, MOQIU. After a moment, she put down the letter and said to her direct disciple, "It seems that the Golden Art Martial Arts School is very confident about the martial arts competition. In this way, there is no need for us to come forward. This is good." Her direct disciple was a little girl who was not much older than Zhao Chen. When she heard what her master said, she couldn't help but ask, "Master, that's the trade route. You are really not tempted?" Master Emo's beautiful eyes darkened, and he sighed. "It would be a lie to say that I'm not tempted. But this matter is essentially an extension of the fight between Yan Hongxia and Che Yugang, two masters on the list of outstanding people. I agreed to the Che family's request to initiate a fight for the trade route, and negotiated terms with the Zhao family shopkeeper Lin, just to avoid offending both sides. But this approach is called snake and rat at both ends. It's easy to not please both sides. Now it's more beneficial to me. An extension of the fight between Wanjia Shengfo and Hongxia Sword. The Golden Art Martial Arts School is related to the Yan family?" Her direct disciple said in astonishment. "If it was just the Golden Art Martial Arts School, we wouldn't encounter much trouble. But the mistress of the Zhao family has a very good relationship with Yan Hongxia, and many of the Zhao family's businesses in the county are protected by the Yan family. Now that the Zhao family wants to expand its business to Dunhuang, the Che family will naturally not let them succeed easily." At this point, MOQIU shook his head. "Forget it. Why am I telling you all this? Anyway, in 7 days, you and I will just go through the motions as master and disciple." Outside the west gate of Human, the Green Snake Martial Arts School, a short old man in green clothes came up to the tall and burly Master Shi and reported in a low voice, "Master, it is true that 10,000 families Che Yugang was injured by a magical power, and it has spread throughout the county. Do you think we should?" His meaning was very clear. Since the pillar of the Che family had been seriously injured, they could just pretend to obey the instructions. After all, Yan Hongxia was not easy to mess with either. Master Shi was about 30 years old, with 2 delicate mustaches. After hearing the report, he lowered his head and pondered for a moment, and finally said firmly, "No, we still have to fight for that trade route with all our strength." "Why?" the old man in green asked puzzledly. "2 reasons. First, Che Yugang was only injured, not dead. Changing his position now would offend the Che family and not get any good from the Yan family. Second, and most importantly, that is, our martial arts school really needs this trade route. After all, with the current income, it is difficult to afford Cheyenne Kandan and other auxiliary opening bills." Master Shi said helplessly. Because he had spent too much money when he opened his eyes and ears, which led to the martial arts school having to move out of the city, Master Shi felt guilty towards the other brothers. So, that trade route must be taken no matter what. Master Shi said firmly. Although the Human Chamber of Commerce is called the Chamber of Commerce, it is actually an organization jointly established by the major local cultivation forces in Human to distribute benefits. It is in charge of most of the affairs of the martial arts in the county, and has amazing power. The president of the Chamber of Commerce is currently the deacon sent by the Li family to Human, Li Fuan, the Green Lotus Sword who ranks first on the Human outstanding list. But as a supernatural power cultivator, Li Fuan is actually just a figurehead, and does not really manage things. The power of the Chamber of Commerce is controlled by the Elders Council composed of 5 vice presidents. The Che family naturally has a seat in the Elders Council. The heroic woman who led people to block and hunt down Zhao Jin and Zhao Qin at the dock is one of the vice presidents of the Human Chamber of Commerce. Her name is Che Qingsu, the niece of Che Yugang, the Buddha of 10,000 families. She is domineering and arrogant. She does not allow any voice that is not conducive to her uncle to appear, and for this reason she has made enemies with many people. But Che Yugang loves this niece very much and still allows her to sit in the position of vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. At this time, Che Qingsu had just come out of the room. where Che Yugang was recuperating, and she heard her subordinates report that the Golden Art Martial Arts School had accepted the competition. Her eyes moved slightly, and then she nodded and said, "I see, I will be there in person when the time comes." The subordinate responded first, then showed hesitation on his face, and tactfully suggested, "Vice President, should we restrain ourselves and not overly stimulate the Yan and Zhao families at this time? The more it is at this time, the more we cannot show weakness, otherwise won't the villains think that the uncle is seriously injured and our Che family is in trouble?" Che Qingsu glared and scolded, "I have my own opinion on this matter, you don't have to meddle in it." "Yes." The subordinate was immediately panicked and knelt on the ground. In addition, send someone to look for some young boys and girls with pure auras. I don't care what means you use, bring them here as soon as possible. This is related to the injury of the uncle, do you understand? Che Qingsu narrowed his eyes. The subordinates understand. The man responded respectfully again, then turned around and left after apologizing. After he walked away, Che Qingsu restrained the anger on his face, only turned his head to look at the room where his uncle was in seclusion, stretched his lips to reveal an inexplicable smile, and murmured, "Buddha has mercy." 3 days later, early in the morning, in the small courtyard, Zhao Chen, holding the wind-cutting sword, slowly practiced a set of Dairi Xingcha sword technique. His movements were like a dragon emerging from the water, and he was as quiet as a cat catching a mouse. The mysterious sword technique, the true energy surged up, but it dissipated at the last moment. After putting away the sword and standing, Zhao Chen exhaled a breath of turbid air, and sighed silently. "No. This Dairi Xingcha sword energy killing move is really difficult to practice. It's because I haven't practiced for a long time, and haven't accumulated enough. If it weren't for the Lukaku position of the traveling merchant, I'm afraid I would have to practice for several months to reach my current level, not to mention that I have cultivated a sword ki killing move in the true ki realm." After finishing the morning exercise, Zhao Chen did not go to pay his respects to his master as usual, because senior brother Feng was going to break through to the true ki realm today, and the master was protecting him. Knowing that others' breakthroughs were not blessed by the Lukaku position like himself, the process was actually quite difficult, and could not be completed without a day, so Zhao Chen planned to take advantage of this opportunity, to run to the desert, and pick up the purple light ring hidden there. He first returned to the room, and looked at Sister Hangsha who was still sleeping. After seeing that she had no other abnormalities, he told the servant Feng that he was going to practice in seclusion, and not to disturb her at will. After Feng responded and left, Zhao Chen put on the Chang'an ribbon, picked up the paper horse he had made in the past few days, quietly slipped out of the courtyard, where the martial arts hall was located, and then left the city from the west gate. Standing beside the road leading to the outside of the pass, Zhao Chen pasted the paper horses with many runes, drawn in blood on their surfaces on his legs, and began to chant according to the relevant memory given by the traveling merchant. As the spell took effect, Zhao Chen felt as if he was really riding on a horse that could travel 800 miles a day, and his whole body was running at high speed driven by an inexplicable force. Outside Human Pass, the north wind was like a knife, cutting through the rolling sand. A team of knights suddenly appeared on the horizon, like the wild sand blown up by the wind, and arrived in an instant. This was a team of more than 10 silver-armored cavalrymen, led by the man who was submissive in front of Che Qingsu a few days ago. A dozen centimeters above his palm, a paper crane was hovering and flying, but its head was always pointing in one direction. Sure enough, that girl has escaped to this area. The man looked at the knights behind him and shouted, "That girl will not escape beyond a radius of 20 miles. Search for her." The knights responded in unison, then squeezed their horses' bellies and rushed out. Not far away, Zhao Chen, who had just retrieved the purple light ring, and had not had time to check its use in the star raft, was using the toad light to hide nearby. Seeing this scene, he frowned and thought to himself, the costumes of these knights are somewhat similar to those seen at the dock that day. People from the Che family? What are they looking for? Today's extra chapter, in the early morning. Chapter 58 Kifi Meng. These knights all look rich. No, they all look evil. Not like good people. Maybe they are doing something shameful. As a righteous young man, you have to stop their evil deeds. In addition, you can also try to see if no-cost business also meets the requirements of the traveling merchant position. After the knights walked away, Zhao Chen hesitated for a moment and also used the cover of the toad light to activate the paper horse on his legs and followed the man in the lead, wanting to see what they wanted to do. Although Che Yugan was known as the Buddha of 10,000 families, after a few days of inquiries, Zhao Chen also knew that he did purchase a large number of sweet potato rice and distributed it to poor families for free. Many people in the oasis outside Human Pass even spontaneously worshipped his longevity tablet. But because of what he saw and heard at the dock a few days ago, Zhao Chen did not have a good impression of him and always felt that he had other purposes behind what he did. Of course, the fact that he had a bad relationship with Sister Xingcha was also one of the main reasons why Zhao Chen had a bad impression of him. After all, although Sister Xingcha has many calculations, she has a bottom line. Those who can make enemies with her are probably not decent people. For example, in an ancient city that was mostly buried by wind and sand, Miss Qi, who was dressed in tattered clothes, was sitting in a corner of an abandoned house in a mess, trying to regulate her true energy. The expression between her eyebrows was still holy and compassionate, but her eyes were full of coldness. Suddenly, she narrowed her eyes slightly, raised the silver moon, and fired a shot at the empty window. The bullet passed through the many gaps in the ruins, and finally bypassed the cover of a broken wall, and directly hit the forehead of a knight who was quietly following her. The bullet's turning is one of the manifestations of the great success of gunfighting skills. In just 10 days, Miss Qi has already opened the 4 orifices. But this gunshot completely exposed her whereabouts, forcing her to stand up and start running again. Bang, bang, bang. As her fingers moved, with every gunshot, a bullet would come from an unexpected angle and smash the head of a Che family knight. Even if they were wearing helmets and visors, it would be of no use, because the bullets could accurately shoot in through the gaps in the armor. After the monks opened their eyes and ears, the power of the gunfighting technique could be seen. However, there were too many enemies chasing Miss Qi, and she had a limited number of bullets. So she could only fight and retreat, constantly circling, relying on her advantage of being familiar with the terrain of this ancient city to delay time. Hold on a little longer. In another 10 minutes, the next mission will begin. When I come back, my internal injuries will be healed, and then I won't have to be afraid of these bastards from the Che family anymore. Just as she thought of this, Miss Qi suddenly found herself in front of a vertical rocky mountain. The mountain was about 20 to 30 feet high, and its surface was smooth, making it difficult to climb up. Miss Qi felt that things were getting serious. She had originally wanted to rely on this section of the mountain to shake off the pursuers, but she ignored her internal injuries. When she was in her prime, this section of the mountain was not a big problem for her, and she could have climbed up by force by relying on Qinggang. But now she only felt that her body was very empty, her meridians were aching, and even her qi circulation was problematic, let alone using Qinggang. And it was too late to try another route at this time, because the man from the Che family had already caught up with the remaining knights. In desperation, Miss Qi had to turn over and jump behind a large rock to use as a cover. However, just such a simple action made her feel dizzy and almost fell. Her physical strength was almost exhausted. Miss Qi pursed her lips, shook her head in frustration, and thought to herself, I'm really doomed this time. I might as well end my life if I fall into the hands of a monk who practices Joizen. But she was unwilling to die like this, so she took out an old pocket watch and looked at it again, cheering herself up. As long as I can delay for another 8 minutes. It doesn't matter if we are caught, but the mission will be difficult after our weapons are taken away. On the other side, the man from the Che family saw this scene from afar and immediately sent people to surround the area nearby. He hid behind the 3 knights and said viciously, "Run. Why don't you run? It is your honor and blessing to serve the head of the family. Little girl, your neighbors, your relatives, and your friends all think so, so why are you unwilling?" Miss Qi's heart was moved when she heard this, and she pretended to respond. "After all, I'm a cultivator at the level of refining orifices. You don't give me any benefits, and let me serve an old man. No one would be happy, right? Benefits? It would be okay if you cooperated from the beginning, but you killed so many people in my Che family, and you still want benefits? Little girl, do you think it's possible? The man sneered a few times at first, then figured something out, and sneered. You don't want to delay time and wait for people to rescue you, do you? But this piece of ruins is far away from the official road, and has no value. Even the horse bandits are unwilling to come. You'd better give up and surrender. However, before he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Unfortunately, her rescue has arrived. Upon hearing this, the man was startled, and without caring about the spells he had secretly prepared, he rushed to the side without thinking. But a flash of sword light lit up before he moved, breaking through the heavy armor on his body like cutting tofu, and inserted into his heart quite easily. Although the wind-cutting sword looks ordinary, it is a magic weapon used by Wang Daoyi to carry his magical powers, and its material is extremely sharp. The one who made the move was naturally Zhao Chen, who had been following the Che family man with the toad light. When he found out that these people were chasing his acquaintances, he chose to do this no-cost business without hesitation. To use the words Zhao Chen had seen in his previous life, this is they have already found a way to die. After hearing Zhao Chen's voice, Miss Qi was overjoyed and asked in an excited tone, "Is Erlang here?" "It's me." Zhao Chen chuckled in response, then glanced at the knights around him who had just come to their senses and were about to point their weapons at him, raised his hand, and snapped his fingers. The next moment, a violent wind suddenly arose, but it disappeared in a flash. Then, all the knights' heads were separated from their bodies, and blood-red fountains surged high, but quickly disappeared, and the fountain bases all fell to the ground. At this time, Miss Qi also tried to prop up her body, and turned out from behind the stone. She ignored the fountains, that were enough to give people nightmares, and only looked at Zhao Chen, who was still snapping his fingers, and met his eyes. Then, the girl, whose face was covered with grey, still couldn't hide her beauty, showed a dazzling smile, and said, "My name is Qi Fimeng." There is another chapter in the early morning. Chapter 59 once again. My name is Qi Fimeng. Hearing Miss Qi introduce herself, Zhao Chen immediately recalled the promise she made when he asked her name in Mirror Village. If I can go back alive this time, there will be a chance to meet next time. Although he interrupted her, she obviously still remembered. What a good girl who keeps her promise. Recalling Miss Qi's desperate efforts to attract the attention of the monsters and buy time for herself to touch the 8 diagrams bright light mirror, Zhao Chen secretly sighed, then pointed at himself and said, "My name is Zhao Chen. It would be better if I could have a more handsome nickname or poetic name at this time. What a pity." Zhao Chen. Qi Fimeng muttered, and then smiled and said, "I'd better call you Erlang, that's more convenient." "Well, you can just call me Fimeng, or Miss Meng." She said this openly, without any hesitation, and naturally brought the two closer. In other words, they have already tacitly become friends. After all, they both know some of each other's secrets to a certain extent. If they are not friends, they are destined to be enemies. Zhao Chen had just saved her, so Qi Fimeng would naturally not choose the latter. Zhao Chen took the olive branch from Miss Qi. He walked to the Che family man who was stabbed to death by him, and asked casually, then, "Fimeng, why were you hunted down by the Che family?" "Because I practice the great compassion and great mercy of Avalokitesvara Sutra, which is the best furnace for Che Yugang. Although he may not know it, he is just looking for nutrients to support a certain happy bodhisattva based on temperament. Otherwise, he would not send so few people to capture me." Qi Fimeng sighed slightly and continued, "They first tricked my family and friends into doing my job, intending to let me serve them voluntarily. Unfortunately, they don't know that I'm also familiar with Happy Zen, so how could I send myself into the fire pit? So, I said I would think about it, but I actually ran away overnight. But I didn't expect that the man from the Che family mastered a tracking spell, so I was caught halfway." She spoke of her family and friends in a flat tone, as if she was talking about strangers, but Zhao Chen could understand it. After all, those people helped outsiders sell her, and he would be angry if it were him. Zhao Chen thought about it, picked up a ring he had searched from the man from the Che family, pointed at it, and said to Miss Qi with a smile, It turns out that this man took the initiative to talk to you just now in order to prepare a spell. However, in his words, in addition to saying that no one will come to save you, there is another sentence that is wrong. Which sentence? Qi Meng sat down against the stone, glanced at the ring, and asked curiously. He said, your neighbors, your relatives, and your friends don't think so. But as your friend, I stand firmly on your side. While Zhao Chen was speaking, he took out an ancient book from the man. It only had 2 thin pages, but the entire text was written in some kind of Dao characters, which made people feel dizzy and their eyes bloodshot at a glance. It turned out that Erlang was comforting me, but was it necessary to take such a big detour? On the other hand, although Qi Meng did not feel that she needed comfort, she was still somewhat moved by Zhao Chen's consideration. At this time, she suddenly saw the 2 pages of the ancient book in Zhao Chen's hand, and hurriedly said, don't look at it too much. That's not an ordinary Dao character. That's the Heart Demon secret text. Zhao Chen was first surprised that Miss Qi could see the secret book in his hand from such a distance, but then he remembered that she had opened her eyes and felt relieved and asked in confusion, Heart Demon secret text? What does it mean that it's not an ordinary Dao character? Miss Qi organized her sentences and said solemnly, the so-called Dao characters are all characters transformed from the ultimate principles of heaven and earth written by true lords in the Shengsuan realm, or even by Dao lords at higher levels. But at this level, in addition to true lords and Dao lords, there are also great evil and evil gods among demons and evil spirits. Interpreting the Dao characters left by true lords and Dao lords is actually relatively not very dangerous. It's more about not being able to fully understand the meaning. Of course, the part where the knowledge contained in those ultimate principles exceeds one's ability to bear is equally dangerous. After all, knowledge is poisonous. But the classics left by great evil and evil god level demons and evil spirits are even more terrifying. Those characters themselves often carry extremely powerful pollution. The madness and death rates of interpreters remain high, mostly because they have interpreted characters related to evil gods and great evils. So scary? Zhao Chen was a little shocked, and almost threw the 2 pages of paper in his hand, and asked, why don't the so-called great evil or evil gods record the knowledge about them in easy to understand words? Wouldn't it be more convenient to pollute mortals? Now, this will at most trap some interpreters or people who have been trying to read it for a long time. Because the description is too direct, there is nothing to carry it. If it is written on paper, the paper will immediately be transformed into a demon. Engraved on stone, the mountain where the stone is located may be polluted into evil. Only Dao characters are more conducive to spreading, so as not to let those cultists who worship them instantly become irrational monsters. At this point, Qi Meng paused and said, the contents of these 2 pages of paper are written in Heart Demon secret code, and Heart Demon secret code is the most commonly used Dao characters in the Xingguan Temple classics. I suspect that there are members of Xingguan Temple lurking in the Che family. Xingguan Temple. Xingguan Temple again. Zhao Chen wanted to ask a few more questions, but at this time, Qi Meng looked at the worn-out pocket watch and spoke again, my time is up. If I can come back alive, I will tell you. Before she finished her words, an evil portrait of Guanyin suddenly appeared behind her head and sucked her whole body in. Zhao Chen, who happened to see this scene, had no time to be surprised, and a familiar feeling of stagnation of thoughts appeared again, and then his eyes went black, and he lost consciousness. At the same time, in the Che family residence in Yumen County, Che Kingsu, the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, suddenly knelt on the ground, as if he was respectfully listening to someone's order. After a while, she stood up and called a few trusted men and ordered, go and check where Che Gang went today. In a dilapidated temple composed of black, white, and grey, Zhao Chen and Qi Meng, who were colorful and out of tune with the surrounding environment, woke up one after another. Chapter 60 Ruined Temple. After their eyes met, and they noticed that there was some surprise in each other's eyes, Qi Meng glanced at Zhao Chen, who was still making the corpse-touching gesture, and sighed slightly. You really followed me again. I thought it was only the last time. However, she did not want to explore the specific reason why the other party could take advantage of her opportunity, just like the other party never asked her why she could travel through the fog of history. Even friends have their own secrets. What's more, with Zhao Chen here, she has a greater hope of completing the mission, which is also a good thing. Otherwise, with her current state of difficulty in walking, it would be really difficult to deal with. I don't know the specific reason either. Maybe it is related to the Bodhisattva portrait I saw in Fang Zhu's memory? Although he said so, Zhao Chen couldn't even convince himself. With the characteristics shown by the Great Sun Star Raft, it is more likely that it has made some shameful deal with the Bodhisattva picture. Zhao Chen thought secretly. At this moment, just like the last time at the beginning of Mirror Village, he heard a sentence in an unknown language, but he could understand its meaning. The 13th year of Yingli in the Tang Dynasty, beating Protectorate. Phase 1, protect Zhang Yunlu until dawn. Zhang Yunlu. Zhao Chen looked around, but didn't see any outsiders in this black, white, and grey dilapidated temple. Instead, he was a little surprised to find that there was no statue of God in this dilapidated temple. There was only a badge more than 1 person tall on the main seat. This badge was carved from ordinary stone, with a sun in the middle and many stars carved around it. But because it has been abandoned for a long time, many places have been weathered, and the details can't be seen clearly. What kind of temple is this? As soon as Zhao Chen had doubts in his mind, Qi Meng over there said, this is a temple dedicated to the star god. After the Jiaoshan heaven change, the belief in the star god was once prosperous, and there were many temples. But later, I don't know what happened. The star god never responded to the prayers of believers again, and even the star associations that believed in the star god were occupied by demons and turned into evil organizations. It turned out to be the temple of the star god. But Qi Meng, you know a lot, and your knowledge is probably not worse than that of my master. Zhao Chen was thoughtful, but he didn't intend to delve into it. He thought for a while, and just when he was about to ask about the task, the colors of the surrounding scenery gradually became richer. A few seconds later, as a gust of cold wind blew in from the window of the ruined temple, Zhao Chen keenly noticed that Miss Qi shivered and shrank. She had been running away before, and her outer clothes had been scratched and tattered while moving around. Fortunately, her inner clothes were relatively intact, so she didn't reveal her spring light. But this historical fog was in the middle of winter, located in the northern part of the Great Wall, and the outside of the ruined temple was covered with a thick layer of white snow. Her clothes were not enough to keep warm. In addition, Miss Qi had suffered serious internal injuries at this time, and it was difficult for her to circulate her true Qi, making it even more difficult to keep warm. Seeing this, Zhao Chen immediately took off his coat and put it on Qi Meng. Thank you. In response, Miss Qi didn't hesitate to thank her directly, but this warmth was remembered in her heart. At this time, there was a creaking sound outside. It was the sound of pedestrians stepping on the snow. Qi Meng tilted her ear and listened for a few seconds, then quickly said, at least 10 people, 2 of whom have achieved true Qi. Maybe there is a target we want to protect inside. It could also be an enemy. Zhao Chen said, while protecting Miss Qi behind him, and asked, how many bullets do you have left? Only 1 bullet is left. I originally wanted to keep it for myself. Qi Meng also took the silver moon in her hand, and then smiled. Your musket has helped me a lot. Same here, your toad light has also provided me with a lot of help. Zhao Chen raised the green ribbon on his wrist, took out a box of bullets from his arms, and handed it to the other party, saying, see if it can be used. This was what he had just searched from the leader of the Che family. Seeing this, Miss Qi's eyes lit up, and then after a simple inspection, she took out 5 bullets and pressed them into the wheel of Silver Moon. At this time, a group of people from the rivers and lakes, men and women, old and young, had already carried their luggage, stepped on the snow, and walked from far to near to the door of the ruined temple. Then, the leader of the group shouted, it's difficult to travel on a snowy night, rest for a while, and go again at dawn. He exhaled a cloud of white air, revealing the coldness. Traveling at night. Wasn't there a taboo against encountering the strange realm at night in the Tang Dynasty? Zhao Chen's heart moved when he heard this, and he once again realized the difference between the Tang Dynasty and Daxia. Okay, it's okay for me, but Miss Yunlu can't stand the bitter cold weather. An old man responded with a smile. It's Yunlu who is useless and a burden to everyone. A weak female voice sounded, her tone full of apology. Ha, we are all people who have received the kindness of Zhang during the chaos of demons and evil spirits, so naturally we have to protect the young lady, the old man said indifferently. With his lead, the others naturally had no objection, so they all stopped. The middle-aged man in the cloak, who was in the lead, drew his sword, pushed open the temple door first, and came in to explore the way. He did not dare to be careless, and looked at the door from a distance. After a while, he saw Zhao Chen and Qi Fimeng on the side of the statue. The middle-aged man has opened his eyes, and can see things at night. At this time, he saw a pair of young boys and girls with good looks and temperament hiding in the ruined temple. The girl was still wearing the boy's coat. He was stunned for a few seconds, and he didn't know what was in his mind. It was not until the old man behind him asked that he came back to his senses, and then he slightly bowed to Zhao Chen and Qi Fimeng. I'm sorry to bother you two if I'll let you stay for one night today. At this time, Zhao Chen also saw the appearance of the middle-aged man clearly, and found that there was a blood-red mole between his eyebrows, which was unforgettable at first sight. Please do as you please. This ruined temple is not my home. Zhao Chen nodded to him, and then looked at the other people who followed the middle-aged man in, including the old man, especially the girl in white following the old man. The girl was probably only 13 or 14 years old, with a pretty face and pure temperament. She gave Zhao Chen the same feeling as the brother and sister that Miss Qi and Che Yugan were going to kidnap. But her skin was extremely pale, and it was not known whether it was caused by the cold or was born like this. This should be Zhang Yunlu who needs protection, right? While Zhao Chen was thinking secretly, the middle-aged man with a red mole on his forehead first found an oil lamp with a small hole on the edge on the altar, poured in lamp oil, lit it with a flint, and then found some dry firewood from somewhere, and let the firewood pile. The broken temple suddenly became bright and warm. Next, after arranging a group of people, and letting them grill their own dry food, he took out 3 incense sticks from his bag, inserted them in front of the incense table with the sun and stars emblem, lit them, and worshipped respectfully. His movements were serious and his attitude was solemn, as if he was a devout believer in worshipping God. Someone from the Star Society? Chapter 61 Taboo. Snowy night, dilapidated temple, staying overnight, worshipping gods. These elements are almost all here. If nothing goes wrong later, I'm afraid even God can't stand it anymore, right? Judging from the mission, this night is destined to be restless. Zhao Chen complained in his heart while watching this scene, as if he was watching a drama. After the middle-aged man with a red mole on his forehead finished worshipping the star god, Zhao Chen took the initiative to talk to him out of professional habit and the desire to obtain information. Senior, do you believe in the star god? My ancestors were once protected by the star god. Although we have now converted to believe in the many earth gods conferred by Taichu Daochen, it is only right to worship them. The middle-aged man smiled and looked at Zhao Chen and Qi Fimeng behind him. We still have some dry food here. Do you two need it? Zhao Chen himself didn't feel hungry, but Qi Fimeng had been running for nearly a day and did need some food, so he nodded when Zhao Chen turned around and looked at her. Seeing this, Zhao Chen then bowed and said, "Thank you, senior. I'm Zhao Chen, and this is my good friend Miss Qi. What is your name?" Haha, I see that the two friends have a long breath, so they must have cultivated true Qi, so there is no need to call me senior. By the way, my name is Gufeng, and I'm also a little famous in the Beating Protectorate. You two may have heard of it. Gufeng laughed and briefly introduced himself, as if waiting for Zhao Chen and the others to say I have heard of you for a long time. But Zhao Chen and Qi Fimeng had no idea about the name of martial artist who practiced Kigen tens of thousands of years ago, so they had to pretend to be ignorant of the world, took the baked buns, and ate them by themselves after checking them. Gufeng was bored, but not annoyed. Facing the teasing eyes of the old man on the other side, he said calmly, "In fact, I don't like the nickname Red Plum embroidered in the snow given to me by my friends in the martial arts world. It sounds too feminine. Doesn't Uncle Gu also have a nickname, a little cinnabar ghost?" The girl who looked only 13 or 14 years old, the suspected target of the mission, Zhang Yunlu, also smiled and said in jest, "This is not as good as embroidered red plums in the snow, and it directly exposes my special skills." Gufeng smiled bitterly and shook his head. Then he seemed to be interested and started the conversation. Speaking of the nickname a little cinnabar ghost, it is because the red mole between my eyebrows contains innate supernatural powers, which is extremely restrained against ghosts and spirits. And in the decades after the chaos of demons and evil spirits, there were heavy casualties in the Tang dynasty and even the entire Zhuanghan realm, so ghosts were rampant, which gave me the opportunity to become famous. But with the Taoist decreeing the gods of the earth, the chaos of ghosts has become less and less, and my supernatural power has not been used for a long time, and I'm afraid many people have forgotten it. The so-called innate superpowers are actually innate spells inherited from the bloodline. They are much weaker than the natal spells of mana cultivators, but there is no need to have various taboos like using other spells. For example, the companion magic weapon of the original owner can actually be regarded as a kind of innate superpower, and belongs to the category of artifacts. Is the red mole the carrier of innate superpowers? But why did this hero choose to say it now? When Zhao Chen was wondering, Qi Fimeng leaned close to his ear and whispered, "Someone is coming." Zhao Chen's heart tightened when he heard it, and he immediately became alert, ready to enter the star chariot and summon Wang Daowei at any time. At this time, a sinister voice sounded, seeming far and near, seeming left and right, making it impossible to distinguish his specific location. "Gufeng, do you think you can scare me away with just a few lies? That's underestimating me," the ghost old man. Hearing this, the 10 people who were originally sitting around the fire all stood up and looked around vigilantly, and the old man also stirred up his true energy and protected the little girl in white by his side. Only Gufeng sat there without moving. The red mole between his eyebrows swelled up at this moment and then emitted 2 blood-red rays of light. Well. As 2 strange cries sounded, 2 transparent figures emerged out of thin air in the corner of the ruined temple, but they soon melted in the red light. Seeing this scene, especially those who saw a ghost for the first time, they couldn't help but feel a little scared, and were glad that there was Gufeng, the ghost-seeing person here, and Zhao Chen, whose spiritual perception could already reflect 3 feet around him, naturally discovered the existence of ghosts a long time ago. He felt that, if he switched his true energy to the state of Chidi Yangyu and true energy, he should be able to get rid of this ordinary ghost. However, he is now obviously more interested in the ghost old man hiding behind the scenes. After all, he has been thinking about the spell of hooking souls for a long time. After solving the ghosts that invaded the ruined temple, Gufeng slowly stood up and snorted coldly, "Playing tricks? Ghost old man, do you dare to come out and see?" Haha, Gufeng. How many times can you use your half-baked supernatural power? My army of ghosts is endless. If you know what's good for you, hand over Miss Zhang. My young master just admires Miss Zhang's fairy-like appearance and wants to form a good relationship with her. And you, is it worth it to risk your life for a little girl? Hasn't Zhang Dunfeng ever done anything that makes you dissatisfied? The sinister voice sounded again, with a bit of a bewitching effect. The little girl in white, Zhang Yunlu, had not yet cultivated her true energy, and her thoughts suddenly fell into chaos. She was about to persuade the uncles who were protecting her not to be so stubborn. Except for Gufeng and the old man, the other warriors also began to waver in their hearts. Seeing that things were not going well, Gufeng circulated his true energy and shouted loudly, "We are deeply indebted to the hero Zhang, so we will naturally not hand Miss Zhang over to you evil demons." The old man also reacted after hearing what he said, and he also stirred up his true energy and began to name the people around him one by one. You, Hansen, were chased by the 3 wolves of the desert from Ganzhou to beating and were almost killed. Fortunately, Zhang Daxia came to your aid and saved you. You, Liu Zhen, you offended the court's lackeys and fled to beating like a stray dog. Only with the protection of Zhang Daxia was you spared the lawsuit. You can't be bewitched by him. Hearing his words, the faces of the people around him struggled slightly, but Gufeng and the old man had average true energy quality, and they didn't open their orifices, so the effect naturally couldn't compete with the magic. This spell seems to be the spell demon words, to confuse the people in the secret records of the curse of the Yazi. Zhao Chen, who has been taking time to study this book from Fang Zuzi recently, was slightly moved and thought, I remember that the taboo of using demon words to confuse the people is, you can't listen to Buddhist Zen music. Thinking of this, Zhao Chen turned his head and whispered a few words to Qi Fimeng's ear. The latter's eyes lit up and nodded immediately. Haha, that's right. Why would you work for a dead man? He helped you, but he didn't do you much good. You should resent him. The gloomy voice became more and more proud, and finally laughed. But at this moment, there was a sense of compassion in the dilapidated temple, as if there was a Buddha's light, and then a compassionate female voice suddenly sounded, Om Mani Padme Hum. Plop. With a scream, someone fell from the roof, his whole body twitching, his face extremely hideous, and he seemed to be in great pain, and the sinister voice disappeared completely. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Routine. Seeing the man who fell from the roof twitching a few times, bleeding from all 7 orifices and stopping breathing, the warriors who had been bewitched by his magic finally regained their clarity of mind and were immediately ashamed and shocked. They were ashamed of their weak will and being bewitched by evil words, and shocked that the ghost old man who was famous in beating and could almost stop children from crying at night died so easily. Even Gu Feng and the old man, who were the strongest among the people present, couldn't help but look at Zhao Chen and the compassionate Miss Qi, with thoughts rolling in their minds. Is this the mantra of Buddhism that can break the evil spell? Just when they wanted to say thank you, they saw the handsome young man who called himself Zhao Chen suddenly draw out an ordinary long sword, and then pounced towards the body of the ghost old man like a dragon emerging from water. The sky turned upside down, and the birds flew away. In one blow, it seemed as if the wind had blown away the sword. When Gu Feng and the others came to their senses, the body of the ghost old man had been ignited by a domineering, noble, and fiery true Qi. Several transparent figures rose from his head and tried to escape, but in the end they were all burnt to ashes in the wailing. It turned out that, although the ghost old man was killed by the backlash of the taboo, the little ghosts he fed also lost control. If left alone, those ghosts would probably merge into new monsters after gnawing at the host. So Zhao Chen suddenly took action and used the simulated Red Emperor Yang Yuan True Qi to solve this hidden danger. After doing all this, Zhao Chen made a sword flower and put it into the scabbard. He had practiced this action in front of the mirror for a night before. Then he smiled and explained, this person is practicing the evil art of demon words to confuse the masses in the secret record of the curse of the gnawing scepter. He hates hearing Buddhist sounds the most, so he was defeated by Miss Qi's Buddhist mantra. His tone was relaxed, as if killing the ghost old man and destroying many ghosts with one sword was just a trivial matter. Coupled with his good appearance and the 5 immortal spiritual Qi with the effect of 3 realms are happy, bowing to the heavenly lord, he was really unspeakably cool, which made everyone present sincerely convinced and gave rise to a sense of trust. Especially the girl Zhang Yunlu, who was only 13 or 14 years old, looked at him with admiration in her eyes. The other party is obviously about the same age as her, but he has already mastered the true Qi, and his swordsmanship is so strong that he can even kill ghosts with one sword. But she can only rely on the protection of her uncles to avoid being captured by the bad guys who covet her. Thinking of this, she secretly glanced at Miss Qi who was wearing a boy's coat and suddenly felt ashamed of herself. So the taboo of that spell is to fear the Buddha's voice. Gu Feng suddenly realized, no wonder Miss Qi can defeat the enemy with the true words. But even so, the skills shown by the boy and girl in front of me are not inferior to mine, and the true Qi used by the boy named Zhao Chen just now is. Thinking of this, Gu Feng asked solemnly, little friend Zhao, are you from the Kunlun Xianyang city lineage? Why do you ask that? Zhao Chen kept smiling and asked back. He just deliberately revealed the 5 immortal spiritual Qi in order to influence the people present with the magic of the Qi and gain the dominant position. Secondly, he wanted to use this Qi to mislead Gu Feng and others so that they could imagine their identity and trust him more. After all, this is a Tang dynasty where the Taoist primordial master has not disappeared yet. The young man who has cultivated the 5 immortal spiritual Qi naturally has the buff of a famous sect. Of course, the second point requires that there must be someone who knows the goods, otherwise it would be like flirting with a blind man. Fortunately, Gufeng has good knowledge. What Zhao Xiaoya used is the 5 immortal spiritual key that is passed down from the Xianyang city lineage. I have been with Hero Zhang for a long time, so I will not make a mistake. Did Xianyang city know that Hero Zhang was dead, so they sent you? No, was it young Hero Zhao who came here? Hero Zhang, the father of the mission target Zhang Yunlu, Zhang Danfeng, is a disciple of Kunlun Xianyang city? In this case, it will be difficult to fool him casually. As his thoughts raced, Zhao Chen said carefully, what I learned was indeed the secret record of Kigan and the 12-story building of the Golden Mansion and Jade Chamber, but I did not come here for the Hero Zhang. I just passed by here with Miss Qi. His tone was sincere, and what he said could not be more true. Passing by, Gufeng glanced at Miss Qi, who was obviously from the Buddhist sect, and nodded thoughtfully. Seeing that the foreshadowing was almost done, Zhao Chen was about to ask about the inside story of Zhang Yunlu's attack when his spiritual sense, which had been reflected outside, suddenly found that 3 figures had come to the window of the ruined temple, obviously looking for an opportunity to attack. At the same time, Gufeng seemed to have noticed something, and he stretched out his long sword to meet the enemy. But before he could make any move, he suddenly heard 3 bang 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 sounds. Then he saw a flash of silver light, like lightning, and the 3 people outside the temple fell into the temple from the window frame, as if they had heard a command, with a loud thump. When he looked closely, each of their heads had been blown off by a small part. Yan Hangsha once said that a cultivator who has opened his eyes and ears and cultivated the gunfighting technique to perfection can be compared to a master who opened all 9 orifices before firearms became popular. It seems that this is true. Moreover, people of this era have probably never seen the power of a revolver and are not prepared at all. Zhao Chen looked at the miserable death of the 3 people and his eyes twitched. He was like this, so Gufeng, the old man and others were naturally more surprised. They stared at Miss Qi who had taken back the silver moon. They saw that she was still full of compassion and chanted the mantra of rebirth, as if she was praying for the dead. They seemed to be the 3 ghosts of Yinshan. The old man suddenly shouted, after identifying the corpses planted in the temple. The 3 ghosts of Yinshan? Each of them is not weaker than Gufeng, and the 3 of them can fight against the 9 orifice cultivators together. In the end, they died so easily? What kind of shocking hidden weapon is this? Exclamation mark. Even the legendary rain of pear blossom needles does not have such terrible power, right? Could it be a new type of Buddhist magic weapon? Just when everyone was silent, Zhao Chen broke the silence. Can you tell me what happened specifically? We were attacked for no reason, and Miss Qi, and I want to know the reason. At least tell us who the enemy is. Overwhelmed by the power of the silver moon and the influence of Zhao Chen's supernatural power, and the identity of the other party in his mind, the leader Gufeng sighed without much hesitation. It is the current beating Protector General Bush who wants to take advantage of the death of Hero Zhang to let his son forcibly marry Miss Zhang, and seize the Xianyang city inheritance left by Hero Zhang. They are also afraid of being blamed by Xianyang city, so they want to get rid of us and force Miss Zhang to submit to cover up their tracks. Fortunately, Hero Zhang had made arrangements before his death, which allowed us to deceive the Protector General's hidden man and escape successfully. And as long as we rush to Lunte and inform Hero Zhang's Yu family of this, we will be safe. It's a pity that we were caught up by the general's men halfway. It was for the inheritance of Xianyang city. I need this too. Zhao Chen's heart was burning, but on the surface he said righteously, how dare you blatantly seize the inheritance of Kunlun, and the means are so despicable. As he said, he looked at the sad looking little girl in white, Zhang Yunlu, and said, don't worry, I will take care of this matter. Zhang Yunlu was unconsciously attracted by his confidence and momentum, but then she remembered something and said, in fact, it doesn't matter if I give them the classics left by my father, because they can't understand it at all. If they read too much, they will feel dizzy and hear mumbling. Daddy is not a person who cherishes his own things, and Teichu Daojin also does not prohibit the private teaching of skills. So I have already shown it to the general of the capital, but they don't believe it. At this point, the little girl was angry. Hearing this, Zhao Chen's mind turned quickly, and then laughed and said, how can the Dao characters of my Kunlun be so easy to decipher? It's normal for them not to understand it. Daddy said so too. The little girl nodded repeatedly. Then the two of them talked more and more speculatively. With the little girl's deliberate catering, Zhao Chen seemed to be a little floating, and said in a very senior manner, I see that you seem to have entered into tranquility, but you don't practice your mind method all the time. Are you encountering difficulties in your practice? Our skills are from the same source. I think I can give you some advice. Seeing the question, Zhang Yunlu was delighted, and immediately took out a secret book from her arms. She flattered for a while, wasn't it for this? After all, after her father died, she realized the importance of strength without protection. But she also couldn't understand the Tao text. Now there is a senior brother from Xianyang City, so of course she has to seize the opportunity. Of course, this is also because she has an inexplicable trust in Zhao Chen. Others would not be so anxious. As for other people, they also think it is natural and there is nothing wrong with it. Instead, they took the initiative to walk a few steps away to avoid suspicion. But what Zhang Yunlu didn't know was that Zhao Chen deliberately guided her to have this idea from the beginning. Taking over the secret book, Zhao Chen had no guilt for tricking the little girl. He flipped through the booklet casually like a master and said with a smile, what don't you understand? Tell me. Chapter 63 Purple Light Ring. The secret of immortality of Purple Household is a method of refining orifices from the Xianyang City lineage of the Jade chapter of the Nine Heavens of the Great Beginning, the Kunlun school of ancient times. It takes the meaning of the ghost in the Jade chapter cave, the true body of the five emperors. The key refines the Yuan storehouse, and Purple Household is born as an immortal. It contains 5 methods, namely, the green emperor protects the soul, the white emperor serves the soul, the red emperor nourishes a yuan, the black emperor promotes blood circulation, and the yellow emperor is the master, as well as the diagram of the 5 emperors' true forms on tour. It refines the internal organs and orifices, and contains supernatural powers. This method needs to be practiced, based on the 5 immortals. After practicing the 5 methods at the same time and integrating them, the spiritual platform will be built by itself, and the spiritual consciousness will be naturally formed, which is the so-called immortality of Purple Household. Because it contains Tao text, the standard recycling price of Xingcha is 600 star coins. The annotations to the secret of immortality of the Purple Household written by Zhang Danfeng were obtained by listening to lectures in Xianyang City. The standard recycling price of the Star Chariot is 150 star coins. 13 firearms of various types, with a total recycling price of 85 star coins. Inside the Big Sun Star Chariot, Zhao Chen, sitting on the 6th dragon chair, looked at the contents displayed on the Jade Book, and chose sell without hesitation. Originally, Zhang Yunlu's family secret book also included a part of the secret record of Qigang and the 12 doors of the Golden Tower and Jade Chamber, but because it had been sold once by Zhao Chen, the Star Chariot would no longer recycle it. After briefly telling the little girl Zhang about his experience in practicing the Teichu Golden Jade Guidance method, he returned to Qifimeng on the pretext of taking a rest, and entered the Big Sun Star Chariot under her protection. That beating protector general has been planning for a long time, just for a refining orifice technique? Well, it's possible. After all, from what Gu Feng and the others said, he and Ghost Old Man, who have opened a few orifices and mastered a few half-baked spells, are already famous heroes in beating. A technique like Purple Household Immortality Secret, which can be practiced to the point of generating spiritual consciousness, and only needs to build a bridge between heaven and earth to achieve magical powers, is probably already extraordinary. The era in which this historical fog is located should be the time when Teichu Daojun preached, and the Tang dynasty initially pacified the chaos of demons and evil spirits. Except for some people who went to listen to Teichu Daojun's preaching, the practice methods in other places have not been perfected yet. I'm afraid there won't be too many magical cultivators in the entire Tang dynasty. It's normal that refining orifices still dominates in a remote place like beating. Of course, it is also possible that Zhang Yunlu still has the subsequent skills of Xianyang City hidden, and has not shown them to me. After all, no matter how much he is affected by the true key and feels close to me, he will not reveal all his details. As soon as we meet, As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen glanced at his balance of 31 45-star coins and did not rush to look at the list of goods. Instead, he turned his attention to the book, written in the so-called Heart Demon secret text in the ring, that he had found from the cultivator of the Che family before. The continuous summoning of Wang Daoi at Human Wharf and the ruins of the desert made his star coin balance tight again. The fragments of 12 methods of Heartlight record the incomplete cultivation methods of 3 spells, and lack the key part of refining them into the innate spells. The 3 spells are Paper Crane Tracking Method, Chizzy Heart Control Method, and Angry Word Anger Method. Because it contains Dao characters, the standard recycling price of Xingcha is 350 star coins. Mind Control Ring, the casting basis of Kai's Mind Control Method, can resist 1 taboo. The standard recycling price of Xingcha is 100 star coins. It turns out that the secret book is called 12 Methods of Heartlight. Looking at the price, it is similar to the fragment of secret records of the Curse of Yazi, and both are spells practiced only by cultivators in the Zenki and Lion Kyo realms. Logically speaking, this kind of spell is not some kind of ultimate truth of heaven and earth, or a description of high-level demons and evil spirits. In fact, there is no need to write in Dao characters. It is not like the secret records of Kigan and the 12 Towers of the Golden Tower and J Chamber, which needs to describe the true meaning of Teichu, nor does it need to annotate the 5 Emperors symbol like the secret of immortality in the Purple Household. It's just a mere spell. The same type of secret records of the Curse of Yazi is recorded in ordinary words. Well, the biggest possibility of doing this is to make people be contaminated by the Dao text itself when they interpret these spells and establish a connection with the evil spirits in the Xinjiang temple, right? After sighing, Zhao Chen casually sold the 12 methods of Xinjiang to Xingcha, but left the heart control ring, intending to exchange this fragment of spells for study and increase his own knowledge when he has more star coins. He may not necessarily learn this kind of evil spell, but he must understand it. For example, this time he used the taboo of Buddhist sound to break the evil words of the ghost old man, which benefited from his previous research on the secret record of the Curse of Jiaozi. It's a pity that the poor ghost old man has nothing valuable on him. Why doesn't he carry the secret book of ghost control spells with him? After sighing regretfully, Zhao Chen temporarily closed the jade book and cast his eyes on the extra ancient ring on the desk in front of him. This was his goal of entering the desert with the Godspeed spell today, but he didn't find a chance to check its function until now. As for the Purple Household Immortality secret, he didn't plan to exchange it in the historical mist. After all, he had to keep the star coins to summon Wang Daoi at any time. Using his mind to bring the ancient ring to his hand, Zhao Chen felt it carefully and roughly understood its current function. Using the purple light ring, you can borrow power from higher beings through a medium to bless yourself, but a certain number of star coins will be consumed every second. The specific consumption depends on the level and relationship of the target, as well as the amount of power borrowed. For example, if I want to borrow Yan Hongxia's power, I only need to use the Red Emperor nourishing key obtained from dual cultivation with her as a medium, and pay the price of 1 star coin per second. After all, Sister Hongxia's ownership is in my hands. But this thing has side effects. If used too much, the personality, posture, and temperament will become more and more similar to the other party. If the level difference is too big, maybe it will become the other party's clone or part. Well, it is better to use it less. For me now, in addition to borrowing Sister Hongxia's power, the best choice target is actually Wang Daoi. His identity and destiny are in the product list, and the price is 1000 star coins a day. As long as you redeem this first, you can borrow Wang Daoi's power at a lower price, and there is no need to worry about being affected by it, personality and thoughts, or being replaced by it. After all, that is his identity and destiny. Although it's expensive to pay 1000 star coins first, it's still more economical if you encounter a situation that requires a long battle. After a brief calculation in his mind, Zhao Chen suddenly felt that his body in reality was touched, so he put down the purple light ring, then exited the star raft and returned to the dilapidated temple. He looked back and saw that it was indeed Qi Meng who was gently pulling his clothes with her fingers. Seeing Zhao Chen wake up, Qi Fimeng went straight to the point and said seriously, there is a master approaching, and his strength will not be lower than 7 orifices. If he had heard that a cultivator with at least 7 orifices was coming, Zhao Chen would probably have to struggle with whether to exchange for Wang Daoye. But now, he cast his eyes towards the door of the dilapidated temple and smiled confidently. Let's use him to test the sword. Or in other words, use him to test the ring. Chapter 64 Momentum Confrontation. After hearing Zhao Chen's words, Qi Fimeng was stunned for a moment, then guessed something as if by telepathy, and the corners of her mouth curled up. After all, she had also had the experience of suddenly getting something, or some kind of power in the past, and was eager to try it. She understood. On the other side, Gu Feng and others beside the fire saw Zhao Chen stand up and draw his long sword, and they immediately reacted and became alert, looking at the door of the dilapidated temple at the same time. About half a minute later, a tall figure came on the snow, holding a long sword with orange-red patterns in his hand, which looked extraordinary. The man glanced at the ghost old man and the 3 ghosts of Yinshan lying on the ground. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he did not intend to retreat. Then, he looked at everyone in the temple one by one, and finally locked his eyes on Gu Feng. No matter how you look at it, a little cinnabar ghost is the strongest here. Chuayang Divine Sword Liangsheng. Gu Feng stood up suddenly, pointing the long sword in his hand diagonally. His voice was gloomy, and his face was solemn. Hearing this name, Zhang Yunlu, who was just thinking about what brother Zhao had just taught her, jumped up in shock. It turned out to be Liangsheng, the Chuayang Divine Sword. This is a top swordsman who has been in beating for more than 10 years without a single defeat, and is only slightly inferior to his father, who has cultivated magical powers. It is said that he has already achieved perfect true ki, opened the 8 meridians and many small meridians, and opened the 9 orifices, but he has not built a spiritual platform, so the inheritance of building the bridge between heaven and earth has to stop at the orifice refining realm. In addition, this person's swordsmanship is extremely high. The swordsmanship of the Chuayang Divine Sword he created integrates the essence of many martial arts, and has a hint of magic power. Even Zhang Yunlu's father Zhang Dunfeng praised him highly. He once challenged 9 orifice refining masters alone, and killed them all with his sword. Whether it is reputation or record, he is far better than Gu Feng on his side. Not to mention the old man who is even worse than Gu Feng. In fear, Zhang Yunlu subconsciously looked at brother Zhao and sister Qi beside the altar. The handsome young man, whose only flaw was his slightly wide forehead, looked relaxed and eager to try. Miss Qi, whose tattered clothes could not hide her fairy-like appearance, was staring at brother Zhao's back with sparkling eyes, as if she did not take the enemy seriously at all. They didn't know Liangsheng, the early sun sword? Yes, brother Zhao and sister Qi were not from beating, so they were naturally not aware of Liangsheng's reputation. No wonder they were not afraid. Zhang Yunlu thought she had guessed the truth. But for some reason, even if she found a reasonable reason, Zhao Chen's relaxed attitude still made her relax. She was willing to trust him without any reason. At this time, Liangsheng finally stepped into the ruined temple, and as he approached, Gu Feng and the old man began to tremble. In this leaky environment, their faces were gradually covered with sweat, as if the person approaching was not a person, but a sun that had just risen. I have long heard that the 9 orifice masters with perfect true ki are good at fighting with ki and fighting with the mind because their spiritual perception can be released. I thought it was nonsense, but today when facing the Chuayang Divine Sword, Gu Feng realized that the rumors were not exaggerated at all. Even if he didn't take action, I didn't even have the courage to take action just because of his imposing pressure. Gu Feng, I'm here only for Miss Zhang. If you want to live, leave immediately. Liangsheng said coldly. Gu Feng took a deep breath, and under the pressure of the spiritual level, he said firmly, I'm deeply blessed by the hero Zhang, and I can't abandon Miss Zhang. If you want to take her away, you have to step over my corpse. After that, his imposing manner climbed to the peak, and the red mole between his eyebrows became more and more red, and there was a tendency to break through the opponent's mental suppression, which made him feel that the pressure on him was relieved a lot. Taking this opportunity, He raised his sword and pointed it at Liang Sheng, shouting, "Liang Sheng, you are also a well-known knight in beating. Why are you willing to be a lackey of the Protector General?" His rhetorical question seemed to take advantage of the magic and power of the red mole between his eyebrows, causing Liang Sheng to change color slightly, and a look of shame appeared on his face. After all, bullying a little girl is not a good reputation. On the other side, Zhao Chen, who wanted to intervene directly, stopped after seeing this confrontation of momentum, and carefully felt the changes in their ki. He also knew, now that after the spiritual sense was released, it could achieve such an effect with his own will. But why didn't the master tell me about such a useful ability? He already knew that I could release my spiritual sense. When Zhao Chen was wondering, Miss Qi seemed to guess what he was thinking, so she leaned close to his ear and explained with a smile, "The distance of spiritual perception is limited, far less than the range of a fire gun, and it can't affect the masters of gunfighting. It is also difficult to master. After achieving magic power, there are many spells that have stronger effects than it. So this kind of spiritual momentum confrontation skill that relies on spiritual perception and will seems a bit useless to us. After all, after condensing the spiritual consciousness and building a bridge between heaven and earth, these things will come naturally. And the confrontation in gunfighting uses another kind of spiritual perception technique. What's more, the high quality true ki that you and I have cultivated naturally has similar effects." I see. After all, the times are different, and the way low-level cultivators fight has also changed a lot. Zhao Chen suddenly realized, but he immediately looked at Qi Fimeng and said strangely, "How do you know what I'm thinking? This is not the first time." Last time, Miss Qi gave the answer before he asked. Miss Qi smiled. Her eyes were pure and clean, and she said without hesitation, "This is one of the magical powers of my true energy. If you don't even know what others need, how can you be compassionate and save all living beings?" Others could not notice their whispering conversation, but the Chuyang divine sword who had opened his ears could hear it clearly. He glanced at the boy and girl strangely, not quite understanding the meaning of some of the words in their words. But Liang Sheng didn't have time to ask now. He just looked at Gufeng, whose momentum was still rising, and sighed, "Then I will fulfill your loyalty. Don't worry, I will bury you with honor." His expression was calm, with hidden pity, as if he was saying something that was natural. Then, a sword light lit up, like the sunrise in the dark night, magnificent and dazzling. Chuyang divine sword. Just by seeing the sword light, Gufeng knew that he could not block it, and he might not even be able to take a single sword strike, but he still went forward with his sword without hesitation. But at this moment, a red sword light that was far more noble and magnificent than the first sun suddenly lit up, stopping the first sun halfway. Gufeng, who had escaped death, looked intently and saw that the young man named Zhao Chen was already fighting with Liang Sheng. The red true ki and the orange true ki were entangled, raising the temperature in the ruined temple a lot. The medium is not tight enough. The power borrowed from Sister Xingcha with the purple light ring can only reach the level of her 9 apertures. It seems that after returning, I have to ask her for something that is close to her. Chapter 65 Return. The orange-red sword light and the red noble sword energy entangled with each other, and more than 20 moves passed in a blink of an eye. With the power of Yan Hongxia, Zhao Chen finally took the initiative, and began to have spare energy to study the mystery of the opponent's Chuyang divine sword in the battle. To be honest, in terms of swordsmanship alone, Zhao Chen can only be called skilled in moves, and the gap between him and the sword masters like Chuyang divine sword Liang Sheng who can create their own swordsmanship is immeasurable. Even if it is Yan Hongxia, her level of swordsmanship may not be better than Liang Sheng, who has been studying swordsmanship for nearly 20 years. After all, the fighting technique she practiced in the refining orifice stage was also gunfighting technique, and the swordsmanship was practiced because her main training was sword tactics. It's just that Red Emperor Yang Yuan Jian Qi is a Gangsha level skill, and its supporting swordsmanship is more advanced. In addition, Yan Hongxia's spiritual power and true ki quality at the 9 apertures are far superior to Liang Sheng's. This is the difference between divine skills and ordinary skills. So Zhao Chen seemed to be at ease at this time, and took the opportunity to spy on the mystery of the opponent's swordsmanship. It can be regarded as one force defeats 10 skills. However, Chu Yang Divine Sword Liang Sheng became more and more frightened as he fought. Not only was the momentum he created before directly broken by the opponent's arrogant and unreasonable soul power, but his true ki was also constantly dissolving in every attack. He could only rely on superb swordsmanship to barely maintain an undefeated situation. But this will only make him weaker and weaker. When his true ki is completely dissipated, it will be the time of his defeat. Red Emperor Yang Yuan. One of the changes of 5 immortal spiritual true ki of the Xianyang city lineage of Kunlun sect, Red Emperor Yang Yuan true ki. Is this boy a disciple of Xianyang city? Liang Sheng finally recognized the origin of his opponent and saw that the boy who was fighting with him was using him to hone his swordsmanship, but it was not so easy for him to withdraw at this time. He felt that a ki had locked onto him. If he dared to escape, he would be attacked immediately. And the source of this ki was the girl who exuded compassion? What kind of monsters are these? Liang Sheng cursed inwardly, knowing that he would die if he continued like this. He was ready to give it a try, so after fighting for more than 10 moves, he suddenly bit his tongue and sprayed a mouthful of blood onto the sunset sword in his palm. This sword was made of precious star meteorite iron and contained a little celestial star and earth evil spirit. It was originally a good material for refining magic tools or refining life spells, but because Liang Sheng did not have the corresponding method, it could only be made into such a sharp blade. But even so, the sunset sword also has magical powers. As long as it gets a mouthful of blood to stimulate the evil spirit, it can cooperate with Liang Sheng to use his strongest killing move. The setting sun is like blood. Since this move will cause great damage to both the sunset sword and himself, Liang Sheng usually does not use it. But once it is used, there will be no survivors under the sword. Just when Liang Sheng's true energy was surging and the killing move was about to appear, he suddenly saw that the young man had raised a delicate object in the shape of the word factory and pointed it at him. Before he could figure out what it was, with 3 bangs, 3 projectiles hit 3 vital points on his body at a very fast speed. Seeing this, Liang Sheng's spiritual sense suddenly warned him crazily, letting him know that these hidden weapons were enough to take his life, so he didn't bother to use any more tricks and turned to slash the 3 projectiles with his sword, blocking their path. But who would have thought that when the bullets were about to be cut off, they suddenly changed direction and attacked Liang Sheng again at a strange angle. Liang Sheng, who had never seen gunfighting, was so shocked that he almost shouted impossible, although what Zhao Chen used was not the real gunfighting, but a forced imitation of a high level. But Chuang Divine Sword was a top swordsman who had been in beating for more than 10 years and had rich experience in fighting, so he calmly twisted his body, trying to avoid one of the bullets and let the non-lethal parts actively hit the other 2 bullets. His idea was good, but at this moment, Zhao Chen, who had fired 3 bullets with Kling, had already stepped into the 9 palaces, combined his internal ki and external form, and cut out a sword ki in the state of unity between man and sword. This was not Yan Hongxia's Chidi Yang Yuan sword ki, but the only killer move of his own Taiyi Zuanman sword, San sword ki. With Zhao Chen's skill and swordsmanship, he could not use this move, but now that he has borrowed the realm and strength of Yan Hongxia, he can experience it in advance and point out the way for his future practice. Facing this sword energy, Liang Sheng, who was trying his best to avoid the bullet, had no time to respond, so he was determined to activate his sunset blood regardless of the consequences, in order to die together. But at this moment, the 4th bullet came out from an unexpected position and hit Liang Sheng's back of the head directly. Less than a second later, Zhao Chen's sword energy also hit his face. Bang! Liang Sheng, the burly figure of Chuang Divine Sword, fell on his back with half of his head missing, stirring up a cloud of dust. The orange-red sunset sword, like the sunset glow, also fell to the side and gradually dimmed. The 4th bullet was naturally fired by Miss Qi using Silver Moon. Unlike Zhao Chen, she had truly learned gunfighting skills and was much better at bullet control even if her skill was insufficient. What's more, she used the sound of Zhao Chen's shooting to cover up the noise of her own bullets, which made her successful. Liang Sheng is dead. The Chuang Divine Sword that has not met an opponent for more than 10 years ushered in the sunset when it failed for the first time. This young man Zhao's skill is so high His swordsmanship is far inferior to Liang Sheng's, but relying on his more than one level skill and the strange hidden weapon, he can easily solve the opponent. It's like we will deal with those ordinary warriors after cultivating true ki. Is this the strength of the disciples of Xianyang City? It's worthy of being the direct descendant of the Taoist. Gu Feng looked at the boy who was standing with a calm expression and putting away his sword, and then looked at Liang Sheng who had lost half of his head. Suddenly, he felt that the world has really changed, especially the hidden weapon that makes a thunderous sound. How can there be such a terrible thing in the world? Exclamation mark. With this thing, what's the use of practicing martial arts even more exquisitely? He didn't know that in Daxia, countless monks had already summed up the moves to deal with gunfighting, and they would never let Zhao Chen and Miss Qi aim at the fixed target comfortably like Liang Sheng and the three ghosts of Yinshan before. After sighing, Gu Feng and the old man looked at each other, thanked Zhao Chen repeatedly, and took the initiative to run to Liang Sheng and bent over to search the body. In the end, a letter, a booklet, and some loose silver were found and placed next to Zhao Chen. This was his trophy. Zhao Chen remained calm, but he was secretly happy in his heart. It was a good thing that someone could help him maintain the image of a young hero of a big sect, otherwise he would have to do it himself. But just as he picked up the booklet, before he had time to look at it, the first ray of sunlight in the morning shone into the ruined temple. Then, everything around him quickly faded and turned into black, white, and gray. Seeing this, Zhao Chen's face changed, and he only had time to grab the sunset sword on the ground with his other hand, and he and Miss Qi were sucked into the bodhisattva image that appeared out of thin air. Their mission is phase 1, protect Zhang Yunlu until dawn, and it was already dawn. In the ruins of the ancient city in the desert outside Human Pass, the figures of Zhao Chen and Qi Fimeng disappeared for a second, and then immediately reappeared. The former checked the things at hand, and found that nothing was missing, so he breathed a sigh of relief, and said to Miss Qi who was still wearing his coat beside him, "Is it over? This mission is so simple." Qi Fimeng looked at him with a puzzled look and asked, "Is there a possibility that this is the normal difficulty of my previous missions?" Chapter 66 The so-called reward. If every mission involved DOZ like the one in Mirror Village, I wouldn't be alive today. In fact, even this time's Mountain God Temple is considered very difficult among the missions I have experienced. Without you, at least half of the people in the temple would have to die in order to force back the last Chuyang Divine Sword. Qi Fimeng glanced at Zhao Chen with a dim gaze and continued, "And this time it is obviously a serial mission, and the second stage will be even more difficult. In other words, did my joining make the difficulty soar?" With a thought, Zhao Chen no longer dwelled on this issue, and instead followed Miss Qi's words and said, "The second stage. In other words, can we go back to that historical fog next time? It seems that you really don't know anything. Well, since you are already tied to my mission, I will briefly tell you." Qi Fimeng sighed, organized the sentence and said, "Although I have only experienced one serial mission, as you said, we will enter there next time and complete new missions until we achieve a certain ultimate goal, and the serial mission will end. This is actually the same for single ring missions." "The ultimate goal? What kind of goal is it generally?" Zhao Chen asked. Since he was definitely involved, he had to understand the mechanism of this game. Miss Qi recalled and replied, "There are many. Sometimes it is to stop something, sometimes it is to seize something, and sometimes it is to save someone. Anyway, with my current knowledge, I can't see any pattern behind it." She paused and asked, "Erlang, what do you think? If you can't guess it, even if you are so knowledgeable, then I have even less idea." But the purpose of the last Mirror Village mission was clear, which was to let me recover the 8 diagrams bright light mirror. Although he thought so, Zhao Chen still shook his head on the surface, and then asked something else. "How often do such missions usually start?" Qi Fimeng didn't care about Zhao Chen's behavior of changing the subject. After all, even if they figured out the root cause of the historical fog, what can they do with the 2 weak chickens whose true energy is not perfect? It's just adding to the trouble. It happened once every 2 or 3 days before, but since I practiced the opening acupoints, it has been extended to 10 days. I guess as my strength grows, the intervals will become longer and longer. Qi Meng stood up while speaking, and then she connected to the picture of the bodhisattva through visualization, making it appear, and then pointed to the corner of the picture and said, "Look, there is a countdown here." Seeing this evil picture of the bodhisattva again, Zhao Chen found that it was more ordinary than the one presented in Fang Zhu's memory. If it were not for the fact that it could really take people through the fog of history, it would probably only be regarded as a painting with good fine brushwork, and even not as good as the original owner. Just as the woman who bought the painting in Fang Zhu's memory said, it has no charm, and is only worth 5 strings of coins. Thinking of that female voice, Zhao Chen's heart moved, and he asked carefully, "Fei Meng, did you get this painting more than 3 months ago?" Miss Qi heard him talk about Fang Zhu's soul search and naturally guessed what he wanted to ask, so she admitted openly, "There is no need to beat around the bush when talking to me. Yes, I bought this painting from the gathering for 5 strings of coins. At that time, I just thought it was very pleasing to the eye, but I didn't expect it to be so extraordinary." Yes, how could such an extraordinary painting fall into Fang Zhu's hands? Is there any connection between this and the death of the original owner? Zhao Chen felt that the death of the original owner was complicated and confusing, and the things involved might be far beyond his imagination. Fortunately, I have already jumped out of the center of the vortex of Bingquan Town. As for helping the original owner to take revenge, there is no rush. No one stipulates that the transaction must be completed. Anyway, if I can't get his remaining abilities and identity, I can't get them. If I get caught, I can just run away. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen suddenly realized that Miss Qi had hidden the bodhisattva portrait again, but her aura continued to rise, not only returning to its peak state, but also showing a trend of further improvement. However, this trend did not last long, and soon began to decline, and Qi Meng also exhaled a breath of turbid air and sighed. It still doesn't work. It seems that I have to complete 1 or 2 more tasks before I can open my nose. Qi Meng, what are you doing? Zhao Chen roughly guessed what was going on, but he still asked. After all, the other party also said that there was no need for them to beat around the bush. Going on adventures to complete missions will naturally have benefits. Every time I come back, it will heal all my injuries, deepen my compatibility with the practice method, and improve the efficiency of practice. When I was in Mirror Village, I couldn't completely reconcile the 2 artistic conceptions of compassion and demon conquering, so I showed different personality states from time to time. But the reward I got after completing the mission last time made me fully understand the true meaning of Bodhisattva lowering his eyebrows, Arhat's angry eyes, and completely unified them. While talking, Miss Qi also showed her own state. Her face was full of compassion, but her eyes were like ice. This sounds similar to the feedback that the traveling merchant position gave me after I completed the transaction. Is it a similar principle? Zhao Chen looked at Qi Meng, who had a pure temperament, but gave him a strange feeling, and thought to himself. Speaking of the feedback from the position of the talisman, it turns out that the no-cost transaction has no effect. Instead, it is the act of inducing Zhang Yunlu to offer the miraculous secret of immortality of Zihu Shengxian that has slightly improved Zhao Chen's soul power. The key to traveling merchants is still the 2 points of traveling and trading. In the travel, using various means to trade for the items you want. This may be the true meaning of playing the role of a traveling merchant, since it is necessary to constantly make your behavior close to the profession embodied by the name of the position of the talisman. Zhao Chen temporarily calls this practice playing. Entering the historical fog is itself a journey across time, and during the journey, he traded the secret book of Kunlun Xianyang City that he needed through guidance. Only then did he get the recognition of the position of the talisman and strengthened himself. However, this improvement is estimated to have a limit. When the playing reaches a certain level, it should no longer have an effect. Seeing Zhao Chen fall into silence, it seems that he is not at peace. Miss Qi smiled and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Although she can roughly sense other people's thoughts by relying on the magic of true Qi, it is not really mind reading, and it is impossible to be too specific. And even if you want to roughly sense it, you have to be very close to each other, like before in the dilapidated temple, smell each other's breath, and even have skin contact. No matter how generous Qi Meng is, she is still a girl after all. The dilapidated temple is full of dangers. It's okay for the two of them to get close to each other to take care of each other, but now she can't do the behavior of deliberately sticking to him in order to sense his thoughts. Moreover, she will not deliberately pry into her friend's privacy. Chapter 67. Strange Salvation. When asked, Zhao Chen almost blurted out, "I'm thinking about you," but fortunately he came to his senses in time and changed the words, "I was wondering why I didn't get any reward for the task we completed together." To be honest, he didn't have this habit of talking nonsense before, but after becoming a traveling businessman and gaining the ability of good speaking, he almost inherited the eloquence of Zhao Liu and several other friends, but also gained some side effects. Hearing this, Qi Meng did not rush to speak, but stretched out her slender white fingers and pointed at the sunset sword in his hand and a booklet with a rather simple binding style, and then said in a sour tone, "Isn't this your reward? You can bring items that do not belong to that era into the mist of history, and you can also bring things out of the mist of history. This itself is a reward that belongs to you alone." Hearing this, Zhao Chen was surprised. "Can't you bring things back from the mist of history?" Qi Meng shook his head and said, "Of course not, unless it is a reward given by the task, or it is yours. For example, this silver moon musket, after you brought it into Mirror Village, it seems that you can enter and exit the mist of history at will. This may be because it was marked as a commodity for sale by the Great Sun Star Chariot. As a merchant ship traveling between the worlds, it can naturally take goods to anywhere." Zhao Chen nodded thoughtfully, and then casually opened the ancient booklet he found on the Chuang Divine Sword Liangsheng. What surprised him was that this turned out to be the Chuang Sword Manual written by Liangsheng himself, as well as his half-life experience in swordsmanship. According to what Liangsheng said at the beginning of the sword manual, he had done many evil things and would die sooner or later, and he had no disciples or relatives. In order to prevent the Chuang sword he created with decades of hard work from being lost, he simply compiled the sword manual and experience into a book and left it to the enemy who killed him, so as not to disgrace his swordsmanship. After all, the person who can kill him must also be a master. Zhao Chen didn't expect that someone would actually carry a secret book with them. After flipping through it briefly, he handed it to Qi Meng. This was their common trophy, so they should share it. After all, if one more person learned it, it wouldn't affect the price of selling it to Xingcha. Qi Meng took it curiously and then studied it carefully. After about 3/4 of an hour, he closed the book and said with emotion, "This first sun sword is indeed a very advanced swordsmanship, especially its final killer move, Sunset Blood. When used with this sunset sword, it is almost as powerful as an ordinary innate spell. Fortunately, the ki cultivated by the first sun sword is really mediocre, and he has never seen a higher level of power. His sword moves are more than exquisite, but the level is not high, so you borrowed the power and easily suppressed him." As she said, she returned the ancient booklet to Zhao Chen and said, "This sword manual can only be regarded as a reference for me to enrich my accumulated knowledge. But for you, it is a good thing to enhance your combat power. I think if you use the Red Emperor Yang Yuan key to perform this sword method, the power can be at least doubled. Moreover, without consuming the evil spirit contained in the sunset sword, there is a high probability that you can practice the sunset blood move, but the power is slightly weaker." Qi Meng's tone is quite big. When she commented on the first sun sword, she was like a senior in the martial arts world, but she herself was obviously just a little girl who was more than a month older than me. When Zhao Chen took back the first sun sword manual, he couldn't help but complain in his heart. It's not that he didn't suspect that the other party was similar to himself and was a body possessed by an old monster, but after this period of contact, Zhao Chen felt that Qi Meng's temperament and thinking mode were indeed just that of a little girl, at most a little more mature, except for her amazing knowledge reserves. "It's really useful to me. I can give them a surprise when I compete with several martial arts hall owners and escort leaders in Human in a few days." Zhao Chen responded with a smile and piled up the Che family knights who were chasing Qi Meng together, preparing to destroy the bodies. Before, while Miss Qi was appreciating the sword manual, Zhao Chen had searched these people, but only found about 100 strings of banknotes and silver bills, most of which came from the leading man. In addition, only these people's horses were more valuable, but the big Sun Star chariot did not list them as items for sale, and Zhao Chen could not drive them to the market to sell them, so he had to give up. Seeing Zhao Chen calming down and trying to use his power to burn the corpses, Qi Fimeng suddenly stopped him and said, "Wait a minute." Zhao Chen stopped and looked at Miss Qi in confusion. Qi Fimeng walked to the corpses, her face showing compassion. While circulating her true energy, she explained softly, "These people are warriors, and their souls are relatively strong. If they are simply burned, they may turn into ghosts, or be invaded by the weird, turning this ancient city ruins into a dangerous place. After all, this is not the ancient Tang dynasty, and there is no earth god in charge of the underworld. So, we have to save the souls." After speaking, she walked back to the stone, where she had hidden before, and picked up a package from there. This was the belongings she packed before fleeing Dunhuang. Then, Miss Qi took out an incense burner and 3 incense sticks from the package, and placed them in front of the corpses. Then she fully stimulated her great compassion and great mercy universal salvation true Qi, and held a save the soul ceremony that Zhao Chen thought was weird. Qi Fimeng put her hands together, chanted sutras, and combined her true Qi with the smoke from the 3 incense sticks that were burning without fire in front of her, slowly transforming into a vague image of Guanyin. The Guanyin had a solemn appearance, but her mouth slowly opened, sucking out more than a dozen invisible and intangible objects from the corpses, swallowing them one by one, until the last soul disappeared into the mouth of the Guanyin image formed by the smoke. Qi Fimeng's great compassion mantra just ended. Her face was full of compassion, but she did not hesitate to take out a thumb-sized piece of charcoal, threw it into the pile of corpses and lit it. After doing this, she turned around and faced the strange look in Zhao Chen's face and said bluntly, "This appearance of the salvation ceremony is very wrong, right? It's not just wrong. If I didn't trust you, I might have done it directly." Zhao Chen complained in his heart, but frowned at Miss Qi on the surface, waiting for her explanation. Qi Fimeng sighed and said, "Alas, since the end of the ancient times, the appearance of Buddhist magic has become more and more weird. In comparison, the great compassion and great mercy of Avalokitesvara Heart Sutra is not bad, at least it is only ugly on the surface. The rest of the Buddhist skills, especially those that accumulate incense and practice, have truly turned into evil methods. This is also one of the reasons for the decline of Buddhism today." Chapter 68 Room to Grow. The Buddhist skills have all become this weird. Some of the branches of cultivating incense have even become real evil skills. What happened in the end of the ancient times? This is the second time Zhao Chen has heard about the decline of Buddhism from Qi Fimeng, but this time, after witnessing the transcendence scene that can scare ordinary people to tears, he finally has a direct understanding. And this situation is considered okay in Qi Fimeng's eyes. What will the rest of the Buddhist skills become? Forget it, it's useless to think too much, as long as Fimeng herself is not wrong, and emptiness is color. Color is emptiness, the appearance and the essence are actually irrelevant, right? Taking a deep breath, Zhao Chen stopped entangled in this problem, and turned to look at the corpses that were set on fire. He found that in just a short while, they were all burned to ashes. Looking at the small piece of charcoal that Qi Fimeng threw into the pile of corpses, Zhao Chen said thoughtfully, "Warm sunwood. This is the main fuel for steam engines at present. Legend has it that it was cultivated by the Flower God sect, one of the upper sects, and then promoted to the whole of Daxia. I didn't expect it to be so convenient to destroy the corpse and cover up the traces." Yes. Qi Fimeng nodded, thinking of Zhao Chen's previous action that she stopped. She couldn't help but warn, you should try to avoid borrowing power from others as much as possible, otherwise you may be affected by the source of power. Qi Gong is a lesson from the past. Others may not know, but as a fellow Buddhist monk, I know that he must have worshipped a happy bodhisattva. Perhaps he didn't practice properly, or perhaps something else happened. According to my guess, he was probably deeply corrupted by the bodhisattva, so he needed to use boys and girls with special physiques to please the other party, so as not to become the tonic of the happy bodhisattva. But even so, his temperament and attitude are constantly shifting towards the bodhisattva, and sooner or later he will become the other party's food. Deeply eroded? This is most likely because Che Yugan used the purple light ring more than once to borrow power from the happy bodhisattva, and he is not the owner of the purple light ring, so it can't play much role, and it is not as safe to use as me. So, if I cut off his arm and took the purple light ring away, it might be a good thing for Che Yugan. Of course, the premise is that he can survive the backlash of the happy bodhisattva. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen carefully asked, what kind of existence is bodhisattva? Except for the great bodhisattvas such as Guanyin, Manjusri, Samantabhadra, etc., the other bodhisattvas are equivalent to the Taoist true lords. Qi Meng answered as he picked up bullet shells and cleared traces of battle in the ruins. Taoist master. I've heard from my master that this is a respectful title for the Shengxuan realm. Zhao Chen did not ask what was special about Guanyin and other great bodhisattvas. After all, if Miss Qi wanted to say it, she would definitely tell her. Now that she has skipped it directly, it means that she doesn't know, or can't say it. Which sect's Shengxuan existence is this happy bodhisattva? Zhao Chen asked casually as he stood up to help. There is no Buddhist tradition in the upper sect. How can there be a bodhisattva in the Shengxuan realm? Miss Qi shook her head and sighed. This happy bodhisattva has either fallen long ago, leaving only a trace of immortal spirit, or it has turned into a Taoist evil, and degenerated into a demon at the great evil level. The evil spirits at the level of great evil. The last time Zhao Chen heard this title was when Miss Qi explained the Tao text in front of the mist of history. He didn't have the chance to ask at that time, but now he could finally not suppress his curiosity and asked, great evil corresponds to Shengxuan. So how many levels of evil spirits are there? Miss Qi hesitated for a moment, but still simply answered, there are roughly 4. They are the evil god or demon god, that is the source, the great evil that is equivalent to the Shengxuan true lord, the demon king, that is comparable to the Dongxuan true lord, and the ordinary evil spirits, that are not inferior to the divine power master of the 5th realm of Dongxuan. In the territory of Daxia, the great evil has long been extinct. Once they are born, they will be suppressed or expelled by the Shengxuan true lords of the upper sects and aristocratic families. Demon king level evil spirits occasionally appear, but most of them are the Taoist evil spirits of weirdness or Xingyan temple, and there are very few others. On the contrary, it is ordinary evil spirits that often cause chaos in one place, and they are the main targets of Taoist officials and local families and major sects. However, most ordinary evil spirits have no intelligence and are like wild beasts. The trouble is actually the members of secret organizations who use ordinary evil spirits to cause trouble. By the way, ordinary evil spirits are okay, but demon kings and great evil spirits should try not to know too much, otherwise they are likely to have a certain fateful connection with them. Although our fate has long been deviated by other beings, they may not be able to establish a connection, but it is still better to be cautious. So that's how it is. No wonder Master doesn't want to talk to me more about evil spirits. In addition, other beings, are you talking about the Bodhisattva picture? Thinking so in his mind, Zhao Chen asked something else on the surface. Members of secret organizations. I remember before going to the mist of history, Femeng, you said that there were members of the Xingyan temple lurking in the Che family. Could it be that Che Yugan himself is one of them? If you are sure, wait for Sister Xingcha to wake up and report to her. I'm afraid he is not. If he is really a member of the Xingyan temple, he will not be afraid of becoming a tonic for the happy bodhisattva. There is no need to search for boys and girls with special physiques. Qi Meng shook her head gently, and then after a pause, she said, speaking of Che Yugan, we should leave here as soon as possible, lest the Che family send someone to find us again. At this time, after the efforts of her and Zhao Chen, they had completely cleaned up the new traces of battle in the ruins of the ancient city, and drove away the horses left by the knights. They did not keep 1 or 2 horses for transportation, because neither of them could ride a horse. Hearing what Miss Qi said, Zhao Chen nodded and stuck the paper horse he had made on his legs again, then squatted down and motioned Fei Meng to lie on his back. The magic spell. Qi Meng saw the origin of Zhao Chen's spell at a glance, and she didn't pretend to be pretentious. She went straight to Zhao Chen's back and hugged his neck. Compared with Sister Xingcha, Fei Meng seemed a little small. Zhao Chen, who felt the soft touch, muttered in his heart, and was about to pinch the formula and chant the spell to cast magic. But at this time, the words that came out of Miss Key's mouth made Zhao Chen stagger and almost fall. She pouted and muttered, "I'm young and there's still room for growth, not to mention." Zhao Chen didn't hear clearly what was said later, but obviously, because of the skin contact, the lovely thoughts in his mind just now were sensed by Qi Meng's true energy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, Goddess of Light. Qi Meng didn't seem to mind my comment on her figure, and was even annoyed, because she was looked down upon. This way of thinking is not like the women in Daxia that I have met before. Even Sister Xingcha, who seems to be casual and unrestrained, is actually quite reserved and introverted. Could it be that the women in Dunhuang have different ideas? But it has only been there for a few hundred years, and the population has basically migrated or exiled there, so it should be no different from the customs of Daxia. Zhao Chen, who was carrying Miss Qi on his back and moving as fast as a galloping horse under the blessing of the god-walking mantra, thought in his heart. But this time he learned his lesson and kept himself in a state of quiet meditation. In this way, his thoughts can be restrained by the power of the soul and will not be easily sensed by Qi Meng's great compassion and great mercy universal salvation key. After all, the magical effect of great compassion and great mercy universal salvation key to perceive other people's thoughts is not the main job, and it is far inferior to professional mind reading. There was no conversation along the way. When the setting sun slowly withdrew its dazzling light, the two finally returned to the vicinity of Human County City, and Zhao Chen also put away the paper horse on his legs and stopped at the foot of Lushan Mountain in the west of the city. Lushan Mountain is not high, it can only be regarded as a small hill. Zhao Chen heard from Uncle Zan that there was originally a temple of the Goddess of Light built by Westerners on the top of the mountain, but it has long been abandoned and occupied by a group of beggars. They are not beggars, this is just a slum. Miss Qi, who led Zhao Chen up the small road, pointed to the simple houses built around the dilapidated temple and continued, "Most of the people living here are coolies at the docks and low-level workers in the factory. As for the relatively intact rooms in the temple, they are all occupied by people from the Green Snake Martial Arts School. This is their territory." Green Snake Martial Arts School. Isn't that one of the forces preparing to challenge the master? Is this the so-called Order of the Rivers and Lakes? As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen looked at Qi Meng beside him and asked, "Why are you here?" "Because this is one of the escape routes I have prepared." Qi Meng led Zhao Chen quietly from the back mountain into the backyard of the Goddess of Light temple. Looking around, there were only broken walls and severe weathering, and there was no possibility of repair at all. It was precisely because of this that no one occupied this area, and weeds grew everywhere, and there was dumped garbage and dirty things everywhere. Zhao Chen, who relied on his spiritual sense to barely avoid various traps, followed Qi Meng and finally came to a square stone. It looked like the base of something, but at this time it was covered with cracks under the erosion of time, as if it would completely shatter if touched. This was originally the base of the statue of the Goddess of Light. According to the custom of the Cult of Light that was destroyed 10,000 years ago, some dangerous items or even evil spirits should be sealed under the base. After explaining in an inexplicable tone that sounded like a sigh, Qi Meng circulated his true energy and knocked on different parts of the base a few times. Then, the square stone suddenly disappeared, and a downward staircase was revealed at its original location. The cold and evil feeling filled the air and was almost solidified. Qi Meng stretched out his hand with a solemn expression, allowing his great compassion and great mercy universal salvation true energy to come into contact with the cold and evil aura. The next moment, the lingering cold and evil melted away like ice and snow meeting the sun, replaced by light and holiness. "Okay, come down with me." Qi Meng turned around and smiled at Zhao Chen. "There won't be any other dangers down there, right? You said before that this is a place to seal dangerous objects and demons?" Although Zhao Chen was eager to explore such a secret cave, he couldn't help but ask. It's not that he didn't trust Meng, but he felt that she knew too much about Taxi. Could it be that in the historical fog she experienced herself, there were also scenes of Taxi? Don't worry, although almost no one knows the secret under the base now, there were many people who knew about this when the Church of Light was destroyed. This place was emptied more than 8,000 years ago. I rearranged it not long ago and barely restored some of its functions. As he said that, Meng took the lead in going down the stairs, and the sound of his footsteps echoed quietly. Seeing this, Zhao Chen was not afraid of the stage. After all, he could summon Wang Daowei at any time, and he was actually very confident. Although there was no light, this underground space was unusually bright, and the light around was pure and soft, as if it could cleanse people's hearts. This staircase is not long. After walking down 9 steps diagonally, it touches the ground. Because it has been under the statue for many years, some of the power of the goddess of light is stored here, so it can be used as a place to seal those dangerous things. After listening to Meng's explanation, Zhao Chen looked around and found that this was a space of about 200 square meters. There were very few things placed, only a simple wooden bed, food, and clothes piled beside the bed, and a few buckets of water. This was obviously prepared by Meng in advance. Meng sat down on the edge of the bed, then looked at Zhao Chen who was looking around, and said with a smile, "In fact, the biggest advantage here is that we can use the remaining light power to interfere with spells such as calculation and divination to avoid being found by the enemy. Moreover, if we plot a deal with Gang here, he will not be able to sense it." Being treated as a cauldron and forced to leave home, she almost went to a dead end. No matter how good-tempered Miss Qi is, she is very angry about this and naturally wants to retaliate. And from the current situation, even if she mercifully lets the other party go, the other party will most likely not let her go. So Meng directly skipped the compassionate persuasion option and entered the subduing demons and monsters mode. Plotting against Gang, Zhao Chen turned his head, met Meng's pure gaze, and asked with a smile, "Is there any benefit for me?" He is now more and more adapted to the role of a businessman, and there is no gain without it. Of course. As a relative of the Li family, the Che family has inherited the White Emperor Shippo sword and the Black Emperor Tangsu sword in the Li family's 5 emperors true sword art. Although you have obtained Kunlun Sects purple household immortality secret technique from Sister Yun Lu, and you may be able to use it to cultivate the variations of White Emperor servanting the soul and Black Emperor circulating blood, but the Tao text is difficult to decipher, and it is hard to say whether the true meaning has been lost. Moreover, the Li family's sword techniques are good at fighting, and do not conflict with the purple household immortality secret technique. So it can be considered a very good means of protecting the Dao. I remember that you can search the soul, but you don't have the means to bind the soul, right? And you also saw the scene where I exorcised those Che family knights just now. So, if we can cooperate to take down Gang, we'll have a chance to get those 2 techniques, isn't it? Meng said with a smile. Chapter 70 Blood Collection. Outside Human Pass, in the ruins of an ancient city in the desert, a team of more than 10 people settled here and explored the area carefully, trying not to miss any details. They wore white uniforms and turbans wrapped around their heads, and looked well trained and very formal. After a while, the team members gathered the intelligence one by one, and then the adjutant reported it to a tall man in the lead. The man did not hide his face. After all, he was more than 2 meters tall, and his hair was a strange purple color. This feature was too obvious, and there was no need to hide it. Captain, Kun's cavalry disappeared here. All traces were cleaned up very cleanly, leaving no clues. Old Che's psychic skills did not get any feedback. The other party was very cautious, and he should be an old hand, not like a 14-year-old girl. In addition, I also arranged rituals and used the spell of communicating with plants before, but they seemed to be affected and refused to say anything. Finally, the enemy was very cunning. There were footprints of Kun's cavalry in all directions, and we could not determine where they went specifically. The deputy who reported was a woman with a well-proportioned body, but a sturdy aura. Although her face could not be seen clearly due to the headscarf she wore, the pair of demonic pupils exposed had a unique charm that made people fall in love with her at first sight. It seems that someone has picked up the girl named Ki here. In addition, she is an ordinary maid of a criminal official, but she has cultivated superior true Ki. Obviously she has gone astray and joined an evil organization. The tall man with purple hair spoke coldly and directly accused Ki Fimeng of crimes. The female deputy nodded and said, "When we go back, we will report to the county governor and issue a wanted order." The purple-haired man looked at the sky that had completely darkened and ordered again, "Well, since we haven't found anything, let the brothers set up camp as soon as possible. After we rest in this ruin for a night, we will go to Dunhuang tomorrow to investigate who the girl has contacted before. If we can really dig out clues about the secret organization, it will be a great achievement." "Yes." The deputy saluted, hesitated for a moment and then said, "Captain, do you want to send a telegram to Dunhuang and ask them to control the girl's family first? This way, we can force the girl out." Before she finished her words, she felt the captain's cold gaze on her and quickly stopped talking. The purple-haired man stared at her face for a long time until she was frightened, and then he said meaningfully, "Hua, you must remember that our alien camp belongs to the border garrison. Although we usually take the Che family's money and help them do some things, we are not the dogs of the Che family. This time, it is because that girl Ki may really have a problem, so I took on the task of investigation, and issuing a wanted order for that girl is enough to explain to the Che family. What's more, you should have heard the news that Che Yugang was severely injured by the magical monk. At this time, we should not do anything unnecessary. Human County City, the new Golden Dart Martial Arts School in Chenshulin, west of the city. Relying on the cover of the toad light, Zhao Chen successfully climbed over the wall of the backyard and returned to his room. He checked the secret mark he had deliberately left before leaving and found that it had not been touched, so he breathed a sigh of relief. After hiding the wine chopping and the newly acquired sunset sword, Zhao Chen walked to the bed and looked at Yan Hangxia, who was lying there quietly like a sleeping beauty, as if thinking about where to start and what to take away. After a slight hesitation, he sat down on the edge of the bed, pulled up Yan Hangxia's arm, and finally planned to let her bleed a little, to use as a medium when borrowing her power. After all, the blood of a practitioner already contains his own essence, energy, and spirit, and the essence and blood can even double the power of some spells, making it a perfect medium. As for keeping fresh, it is not a problem. Zhao Chen plans to sell the blood directly to Xingcha after taking it out and buy it back when needed. Although there will definitely be a profit from the price difference, considering that keeping fresh requires costs, it is not a loss. Moreover, the blood of mana monks is not expensive, and the price difference is only about 1 star coin. Zhao Chen feels that he can afford it. Although Ki Fimeng warned him not to borrow the power of others easily, so as not to be assimilated or even swallowed by the other party. But Yan Hangxia's situation is different. She now owns the ownership of the whole person. Why would Zhao Chen worry about being swallowed by her? As for the assimilation problem, this is a bit troublesome. Fortunately, although Yan Hangxia's strength is higher than Zhao Chen, her spirit, or soul, has not undergone any substantial transformation. It is actually very difficult to pollute his soul. It is possible to pick up some of Sister Hangxia's habits, but that is also the result of frequently borrowing power. Zhao Chen, who had borrowed Yan Hangxia's power once, naturally had his own estimates in his mind, but he still appreciated Ki Fimeng's kindness. Thinking of Miss Ki, Zhao Chen bled Sister Hangxia while recalling the conversation with her in the secret room under the ruins of the Temple of Light, and the corners of his mouth curled up unconsciously. Because when he agreed to the other party's request for cooperation and asked her about her specific plan, the reply he got was "I don't know." Ki Fimeng said righteously, "It has only been 3 days since I was remembered by the Che family. How could I have time to make any plans? And now yourself and know the enemy, and you will never be defeated in 100 battles. The top priority now is to investigate the enemy situation. I remember you said that the Che family planned to kidnap a pair of siblings at the dock before. Maybe we can contact them and see if they have any valuable information." After the memory ended, Zhao Chen helped Sister Xingcha stop the bleeding and sold the blood to Xingcha. Then he seriously reflected on what happened that day. Am I a little too concerned about Qi Meng? Although we are friends, I also like her straightforward and generous personality, and we both know some secrets of each other. But in front of her, I always unconsciously want to take responsibility, as if I owe her something. You know, I didn't care so much about revenge for the original owner. Is this the so-called compatibility? Or am I attracted to her? That's not right. I'm more impulsive towards Sister Xingcha than when I face her. Could it be the magic of her true Qi? Is the function of this great compassion and universal salvation true Qi a little too much? Fortunately, after carefully examining the decisions I made in my interactions with her, most of them came from my heart, and she is indeed very fond of my temper. In short, when I'm with Femeng in the future, I must always examine my heart and avoid the influence of emotions. While he was thinking, there was a knock on the door. Zhao Chen tidied himself up and opened the door. He found Master Huang Xianjun standing there with a smile on his face. After welcoming the master in, Zhao Chen was about to make him a cup of tea. Unexpectedly, Master Huang sniffed and frowned and said, "There is a smell of blood." Although his magic power was abolished, his nasal orifices still retained a certain magical power. After saying that, he suddenly looked at the position of the bed in the inner room, and his face suddenly became strange. Chapter 71 Prophecy. Chenna, it's better to get rid of some shameful habits. After retracting his gaze, Huang Xianjun showed a narrow smile on his face, and then continued, "Are you really not afraid that Xingcha girl will settle accounts with you after waking up?" "Of course not, at least not in the next 10 years. In addition, Master, why do I feel that your thoughts are even more dirty than mine? Bah. How come I even scold myself?" "Well, Master, you are judging the knight with the heart of a lecher." After complaining a few words in his heart, Zhao Chen deliberately did not respond to Master Huang's words. While making tea for him, he asked, "Master, you look in a good mood. Did senior brother Feng successfully refine the true Qi?" The reason why he found time to go out today was because the master had been protecting senior brother Feng's breakthrough. Unlike himself, who relied on the 9th grade to cleanse, and whose soul power was extremely strong, Feng Kang encountered many obstacles when breaking through. The Qi realm is a watershed between cultivators and ordinary warriors. It is not so easy to achieve it. Otherwise, there would not be so many warriors who call the realm before the Qi realm Wangsun. Huang Xianjun was happy to pretend to be confused about his apprentice's behavior of changing the subject. He twisted his beard, smiled and nodded, saying, although the process was a bit difficult, Xingcha finally successfully opened up his danshan before his soul power was completely exhausted and cultivated a strand of Daiki. That's great. I have to congratulate brother Feng in person. Zhao Chen's face also showed joy. He was really happy for Feng Kang. Although he had only known this brother for 10 days, he could feel that the other party really treated him as his own junior brother and was willing to give him advice on many issues. The master was the same in this regard. In Zhao Chen's heart now, the two of them are much more important than the original owner's cheap father. Tomorrow, your senior brother Feng's soul power is exhausted, and he is sleeping soundly now. Master Huang took a sip of the tea prepared by Zhao Chen, and then said seriously, I came to you, mainly because I'm worried that you young people have no self-control and hurt your body. Master, Zhao Chen interrupted helplessly. He knew that the other party was joking, and he deeply understood why senior brother Feng was so improper when talking to the master. Haha, you are not as good as your senior brother in this regard. You are still too thin-skinned. You need more training. Huang Xianjun joked for a few more times before he put away his smile and said seriously, my energy has been on your senior brother in the past few days, so it is inevitable that I have neglected you. And Zhao Chen, although you are not my inner disciple and cannot be taught the martial arts of the Yuan sect, I can still teach you some of the skills that I, your master, collected myself in the past. As he spoke, he took out a manuscript, placed it on a small table beside him, and continued, this is a secret book of body skills, which combines light skills and footwork. It is called Water Moon Illusion Body. It was originally the condensed basis of the water moon illusion god technique, the innate spell of Shuayu Temple, but your master does not have the subsequent spell training part, nor the corresponding visualization diagram and supporting mental method, so it can only be used as a good body skill. Well, this water moon illusion body is also the prerequisite martial art for the golden art gunfighting technique that your master created. You should practice it by yourself first. If you encounter something you don't understand, you can ask me, but don't expect me to demonstrate it to you. After all, your master doesn't have true energy now, and I can't use the essence of this body technique. Hearing this, Zhao Chen's heart was suddenly delighted. After the battle in the ruined temple, he had realized that he lacked a reliable light body skill. Otherwise, he would not have to rely on Qi Fimeng's silver moon to lock on to prevent Liang Sheng from escaping. Thank you, Master. Zhao Chen picked up the secret book and quickly flipped through a few pages. At the same time, he confirmed its price in the Big Sun Starraft standard recycling price. 100 star coins. For a body technique, that is only the basic part of a spell. This value is really not low. You should know that the 3 incomplete spells in the 12 methods of Heartlight are only worth 350 star coins together. This shows that the complete version of the water moon illusion technique is even better than the spells in the 12 methods of Heartlight. As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen asked casually, Master, which sect is Shuayu Temple? Will we get into trouble if we learn the martial arts of this sect? Shuayu Temple seems to have been a major Buddhist sect in the Tang dynasty, but it declined as early as the end of the ancient times. Although it still retains its heritage in the South China Sea area by virtue of its relationship with the Lichen Sword Palace, it is only a small sect. It is still unclear whether there are any monks with magical powers in the sect now, and its internal skills have long been leaked out, so we are not a big problem. So, practice with confidence. Then, the master briefly explained some precautions and the initial practice of water moon illusion body, then stood up, winked at the direction of the inner room, and said with a smile, Okay, I'll leave first, I won't disturb you. Having said this, he paused, and then once again admonished earnestly, young people must learn to be restrained. Zhao Chen was speechless after hearing this, and he didn't close the door until the master left the backyard. He lowered his head and thought, Master, are you worried that my Zhao family has really changed its partner for the trade route, so you come to give the secret book to build relations? Not really. If my previous speculation is correct, then the master was very likely a magic monk before his magic power was abolished. Although he is down and out now, he shouldn't really care about an ordinary trade route, right? On the other side, after leaving Zhao Chen's yard, Huang Xianjun did not go back to his room to rest immediately, but raised his head and looked quietly at the bright moon in the sky. After a long time, Master Huang retracted his gaze, but there was no trace of casualness and unseriousness on his face, only coldness and hatred. He closed his eyes and murmured, 13 years of Guang, the stars fall into the ice spring. The golden art leaves its hometown, and the divine wind rolls up the waves. The morning light dyes the red clouds, and the water and the moon accompany the 5 fairies. Once the fog rises, all grievances will be returned. This is the prophecy that I sacrificed my entire cultivation and asked for from that great existence. At first I didn't understand its meaning, so I had to come to the remote Bingquan town and wait patiently. But now the golden guards and the divine wind have responded. The morning light and the red clouds are also very obvious, but I don't know what stars mean, and whether water and moon really correspond to my water and moon phantom body. But even if it's not, it should be soon. Kanja has also cultivated true ki, and I have nothing else to worry about. I have enough patience to wait for you and kill you with my own hands, even if it requires my life. Chapter 72 History and Tracing. In the Fuan Library in the South District of Human County, Zhao Chen sat at a table by the glass window, drinking tea and reading the heroic biography of Emperor Gaozu in his hand. Since returning to Human County, he would come here every morning after morning exercise and sit until noon, using books to learn about the history of this world. The Fuan Library is named Fuan because it was donated by Li Fuan, the steward of the Li family in Human, and the Blue Lotus Sword ranked first on the Human Outstanding People list. and both the scale and the number of books far exceed the public libraries established by the court. Just wanting to come here to borrow books has a certain threshold. And the Zhao family, where Zhao Chen is also considered to be the in-laws of the Li family, and they successfully obtained a membership card. After studying the history books, Zhao Chen has discovered that the history of this world before Li Kongsu, the emperor of the later Tang dynasty, became emperor was similar to the world he was originally in, and the major historical events, culture, and art were almost the same. The only difference is that the history of this world is in the style of romance, and it is quite normal for a general to fight against 100 people alone. Even Zuocitist Koko, Nanhua granted peace, Zuj prayed for the 7 stars and other strange things were recorded in the history books. The annotations of later generations also seriously speculated on the cultivation of these generals and strange people. For example, Zhuge Liang was a cultivator in the Qi realm, and there were many taboos in the magic he practiced, so he died immediately after Wei Yan accidentally broke the taboo. And fierce generals like Guan Yu and Zhang Fei are masters who have opened at least 7 orifices. The inner world is just formed, and the spiritual power is strong. They can shock others with their momentum, and it is as easy as taking something out of a bag to kill a general in the midst of thousands of troops. But in general, until the second year of Tangguang in the reign of Emperor Zhuangzong of the Tang dynasty, this world did not have much power beyond the norm, and the highest was only the level of true Qi and refining orifices, and it was extremely rare. The turning point of everything came from the Jiaoshan heaven change in the second year of Tangguang. After that, the evil spirits came to the world, Taichu preached, and the upper limit of the power of this world was gradually raised to the current level. Tongsun, Dongsun, and Shengsun are not the endpoints, and some people even reach the realm of Daojin above Shengsun. Unfortunately, from the second year of Tangguang to the fall of the Tang dynasty and the end of the ancient times, there was no historical record in the tens of thousands of years, only the 3 sentences said by the master. In the second year of Tangguang, the Jiaoshan heaven change, the evil spirits first appeared in the world, and the people were charred. Taichu Daojin Kunlun preached, and the world began to see the method of cultivation. The Zhuangzong brothers cultivated supernatural powers, suppressed the evil spirits, cleared the universe, and continued the Tang dynasty. At the end of the ancient times, the Andong protectorate of the Tang dynasty disappeared. Demons occupied the vast ocean. The 9 veins of Kunlun and hundreds of countries in the western regions disappeared, turning into endless deserts, and the world was in chaos. The rest are just legends, which are not credible. What is hidden in this period of history? And is the loss of history related to the historical fog? With doubts, Zhao Chen cast his eyes on the biography of the heroes of Emperor Gaozu in his hand. The surname of Emperor Gaozu of the Great Xia dynasty was Ming, his taboo name was Zen, and his courtesy name was Shuzhi. His mother, Mrs. Peng, dreamed that the stars entered her bosom at night, and Emperor Gaozu was born. At that time, the ancient Tang dynasty ended, and the princes of China rose up and attacked each other for hundreds of years, causing demons and evil spirits to spread all over the land and the people to live in misery. And the great evil in the sea often invaded the inland. Fortunately, the Taoist holy places such as Daoxunman and Lycan Sword Palace stopped them, and they were barely able to resist. Emperor Gaozu started his army in Liang. After 1538 years, he successively destroyed more than 10 countries including Qinhan, Zhuwu, Zhangqiu, Zhaosong, Xi'an, and finally cleared the world and established Daxia. The reason why it is Nemexia is because the first dynasty of China was Xia, and Emperor Gaozu was ambitious to end with Xia, which implies that the world will not change from now on, and Daxia will not change for thousands of years. Looking at the storybook written entirely in vernacular in his hand, Zhao Chen had the illusion that he was reading the pirated book of 3 copies for 10 yuan in his previous life. Although I know that the level of this kind of reading material is not very high, it is much worse than expected. Zhao Chen sighed slightly, but he had to continue reading. After all, Daxia did not have an official history book of this dynasty. Even if there was, it was not publicly released. In addition to the historical materials recorded by the major sects and families, only the storytelling and the storybooks can understand some of the stories that happened in Daksha over the past 8,000 years. It is said that Daksha's great ancestor Mingsen has entered the realm of ascension and may not have died until now. Who dares to write about him when he is still alive? Fortunately, although the stories in the storybooks are exaggerated, they can reflect some reality after all, and reading them can also increase your knowledge. Hey, the original owner's energy was spent on music, chess, calligraphy and painting. If he could focus more on the main things, I could save a lot of effort. Just as Zhao Chen picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea, ready to continue reading, the corner of his eye suddenly saw through the window and saw a familiar figure flashing on the street in front of the library. Huh, is that one of the two men who confronted the Che family at the dock? Miss Key also told me to go find them to learn about the Che family, but I didn't expect to run into them now. Just as Zhao Chen thought of this, he saw that not long after the man walked through the street, two more people quickly followed and chased the man's figure. Is this being targeted? Zhao Chen narrowed his eyes, immediately closed the book, found the administrator to handle the borrowing, and then leisurely left the library. He casually walked into an empty alley. Zhao Chen used the toad light to hide his figure, and then took out a paper crane that was folded a little ugly from his pocket. Then, he outlined the appearance of the man just now in his mind, and transmitted it to the paper crane controlled by his true energy with spiritual perception. The paper crane immediately took off by itself, and pointed in a direction with its slightly bloated head. This is the paper crane tracking method in the fragment of 12 methods of heart light obtained by Zhao Chen, and it is also the only spell that the Che family man translated into a method of cultivation, so there is no need to find a star chariot to exchange it. However, the method interpreted by the Che family man was even more incomplete. If it weren't for the fact that the taboos were also reduced accordingly, Zhao Chen would not have wanted to learn it, except that he could not be called out by name when casting the spell. The principle of this method is to obtain the location of the person you want to find through the consciousness naturally dissipated by living things. For example, the man Zhao Chen was looking for, as long as someone nearby saw him, his image would naturally remain in his mind, and through his own spiritual dissipation, he would be captured by the paper crane tracking technique. But the biggest problem with this technique is that ordinary people may not remember it in detail after taking a look, and will soon forget it, while most monks can focus their thoughts, and the paper crane tracking technique cannot be used at all. Therefore, after a little longer time, it will no longer be able to track it, unless the characteristics of the target it is pursuing are particularly distinct, so distinct that people will never forget it at first sight. The reason why Qi Fimeng was tracked in the desert before was entirely because her temperament was too unique, and she could save all living beings, and even animals and plants could sense it, so she could be found by the Che family man. Let's get back to the point. Under the guidance of the paper crane, Zhao Chen soon came to a temple. There will be additional updates this morning. Chapter 73 Method. The Stone Buddha Temple is located in the south of Human County. It was abandoned for many years until Che Yugang, the Buddha of 10,000 families, became famous and bought it. It was revitalized and has now become a famous poor relief temple in the city. In addition to providing porridge frequently, the rooms in the courtyard will also provide some homeless people with a place to stay for free. Of course, they will be identified, and those who do not meet the conditions will not be allowed to enter. At this time, Zhao Chen, who had just walked into the street where the Stone Buddha temple was located, saw a long queue coming over, people next to each other, people squeezed together, and a rough count showed that there were more than 100 people. Seeing this, Zhao Chen was a little surprised, because according to his understanding during this period, the price of sweet potato rice provided by the court was quite low, and even allowed to buy on credit first. Only those who could not pay back would be forced to work. Anyone who was willing to work hard would not really starve. At most they would not be full. And the faces of the people queuing here did not see numbness or despair at all, but they all looked forward to it, full of expectation. Just as he was wondering, the crowd suddenly started to stir, and an alluring aroma also came to his nose, and penetrated into his heart. It turned out that the gate of the Stone Buddha temple was opened, and porridge was officially distributed. This smell, meat porridge? Zhao Chen's face became strange, and his mind suddenly became clear, and he felt that the Che family's operation was unexpected. However, he quickly put this matter behind his mind, and turned his attention back to the paper crane in his hand. As a result, it was found that it could no longer guide the direction on the wall on one side of the temple. Obviously, the man should have climbed in from here, and no one witnessed this process. As an enemy of the Che family, hiding in the temple funded by the Che family. Is this playing tricks under the lamp? Zhao Chen glanced at the courtyard wall not far away, and when he was thinking about what to do next, two figures quickly climbed over the wall and merged into the crowd. They were the two people who had followed the man all the way here. Left directly? Did they follow to confirm the location and wait until night to act? Well, these two people are probably not from the Che family. Is there another force targeting this family? It's quite popular. While thinking, Zhao Chen did not enter the yard, but visualized the appearance of the two people just now, and wanted to use the paper crane to track them. But soon, he found that the spell did not work. Those two people may also have an effect similar to the toad light. Ordinary people can't notice them, so the paper crane tracking technique can't get any feedback. And I can see them, because I have spiritual perception. Thinking of this, Zhao Chen cast his eyes towards the courtyard wall, wondering whether he should go and warn that family, but in the end he gave up. He didn't know that family, and it was difficult to gain their trust. It would be better to let Fei Meng contact them. She and the siblings shared the same suffering, and were more likely to resonate. Moreover, for some reason, this temple gave Zhao Chen a bad feeling, and he was not willing to set foot in it easily. It is not necessary to start with this family to collect intelligence on the Che family. After Sister Xingcha wakes up, wouldn't it be more efficient to let her do it? There is no need to build ties for strangers. However, I'm indeed curious about the identities of the two people who followed me. After thinking about it, Zhao Chen finally decided to go to Fei Meng to discuss it. After all, the other party has experienced many historical fog scenes and has much more experience in the rivers and lakes than himself. Shifu Temple, in a cramped room. Wang Zhen, who had just returned from going out, had just locked the door when a girl who deliberately wiped her face dirty took the initiative to greet him and asked anxiously, "Uncle, how is it?" Wang Zhen shook his head sadly and sighed, "Miss Yan is still not here." As soon as they entered the city a few days ago, they planned to go to Yan Hongxia, who had a grudge against Che Yugang, but unfortunately the other party was out on business and never came back. "What about the other relatives and friends of my father and mother?" the girl asked. "Same as before. When they saw me, they closed the door and refused to see me. Oh, if I hadn't heard that Che Yugang was injured, I think they would have sold me out directly." Wang Zhen replied helplessly. How could this be? A trace of despair appeared on the girl's face. If this goes on, second uncle. Her second uncle Wang Lai disappeared when he went out 2 days ago and was suspected of being abducted by the Che family. Jaina, don't worry, the Che family shouldn't do anything to your second uncle before catching you and Xiaoqin. After patting his niece's head, Wang Zhen looked around and deliberately changed the subject. Where's Xiaoqin? My brother fell asleep after eating the porridge provided by the temple. The girl Zhao Jin pointed to the space separated by the curtain. Wang Zhen frowned and said, "Try not to eat anything from the Che family. I, your uncle, have brought you some food." "I know. I would never eat a grain of rice from the Che family even if I die." Zhao Jin nodded firmly at first, then softened her tone and defended her brother. "But my brother was really hungry just now. Don't do it again. You are at the critical moment of foundation building, so you must be especially careful with the food you eat. Other things are easy to say, but don't touch the government's sweet potato rice. If you eat sweet potato rice, you will no longer be able to practice, understand?" Wang Zhen warned seriously. "Yes, uncle," the girl responded solemnly. Seeing that she really listened, Wang Zhen nodded with satisfaction and said, "Let's do this for today. I will go to the Jinbio martial arts hall tomorrow. I heard that the second son of the Bingquan Zhao family now lives there. Although your family and the Bingquan Zhao family are already 5 generations apart, they have the same ancestor after all. They were one family 500 years ago. Maybe you can ask them for help to find out the news about your second uncle." The girl just said perfunctorily, but she didn't have much hope for this. Her close relatives are now avoiding her, not to mention distant relatives who have not been in contact for hundreds of years. The two were silent for a long time, but no one noticed that the young man Zhao Chen, who was separated by a curtain, suddenly sat up at this time and silently posed many extremely difficult postures. Outside Human City, Lushan, in the secret space under the base of the statue of the goddess of light, Zhao Chen, who rushed here all the way, told Qi Meng, who was sitting on the bed, about his previous discovery in detail. The latter thought for a while and smiled and said, "If you don't want to take risks, but want to save the lives of that family, do you have to find out who is after them? That's actually easy. How do you do it?" Zhao Chen asked in surprise. Miss Qi, dressed in white and with an extraordinary temperament, played with the ends of her hair hanging in front of her chest, covered her mouth and smiled. "Just report to the police and let the Daoguan or the Li family handle it. Of course, the premise is that it must be taken seriously." Chapter 74 Qi Meng's new status. Report to the authorities? Zhao Chen nodded thoughtfully. He had not thought of this method before. The main reason was that, if the authorities intervened without Yan Hongxia waking up, he would get nothing. As a businessman, why do things that are not profitable? When he asked this question, Qi Meng smiled and explained, "You have cultivated the 5 immortal spiritual ki. Although you certainly cannot reach the level of the 5 emperors' great supernatural power that can make all things come to you, the people or things you come into contact with must be friendly at first. The stone Buddha temple can give you a very bad feeling, which means that the problems it hides are definitely not small. So even if the authorities wait and see if there is something wrong with the stone Buddha temple itself, it is very likely that the 2 people you mentioned will take the opportunity to escape. And we just need to keep an eye on the development of the situation and pick up a ready-made one. So the 5 immortal spiritual key has this function?" Hearing this, Zhao Chen frowned and asked, "But what if those 2 people are caught by the authorities? What if the authorities didn't find the problem with the stone Buddha temple and it chose to continue hiding? There's nothing we can do about it. But since there is a possibility of gain and the risk is not high, why not do it?" Qi Meng spread his hands and said, "Besides, there are big problems with the stone Buddha temple, so it would be a good thing for the people of Human to expose the matter as soon as possible. I thought you had every plan in mind, but it turns out that you are also a gambler like me." That's right, a 14-year-old girl, no matter how smart she is and how rich her experience in the world, has her limits after all. After muttering a few words in his heart, Zhao Chen asked the most critical question, "How can I report to the authorities to attract attention?" The simplest way is to let a magical monk go directly to issue a warning. At this point, Qi Meng looked at Zhao Chen with a pair of clear eyes and continued with a smile, "But in this way, it will inevitably alarm the county governor and the Green Lotus Sword. At that time, the problems of the stone Buddha temple will indeed be exposed, but the 2 sneaky stalkers may not dare to go. But this actually fits in with our original goal. Stone Buddha temple is funded by the Che family, and I guess the problems inside it are likely related to the member of the Xingjiang temple hidden in the Che family. Once we dig deeper, the Che family will inevitably be implicated. And after the Che family falls, it will be much easier to deal with Che Yugang." Qi Meng obviously knew that Zhao Chen could call Wang Daoi at any time, so she came up with this idea. "What about a way not to alert the county magistrate and the Green Lotus Sword?" Zhao Chen asked. "Then I have to take some risks and take the initiative to show up to attract the official attention and lead them to the stone Buddha temple, but you have to be prepared to let Uncle Wang rescue me at any time." Qi Meng restrained his smile and answered seriously, "Can't I write a letter or ask someone to pass a letter to report it?" Zhao Chen asked again after hesitating. Qi Meng shook his head and said, "There are many magical powers. As long as a letter comes from her hands, it will leave traces and its origin may be calculated. And how big the problem of Shifu temple is, no one knows yet. If we provoke a magical power or even Dangsa and Zenran takes action, the report letter will become a flaw and people will use it to find us. And we lack the means to interfere with divination and calculation. Well, even if we have it, we can't interfere all the time, so I don't recommend doing that. Indeed, although the 8 diagrams bright light mirror can interfere with the divination results, it costs money. If someone keeps calculating me, sooner or later my star coins will be used up. Instead, it is more reliable to purchase someone else's identity and then report it. In this way, the result of the calculation will be biased towards the owner of that identity. However, the only identity I can buy at present is Wang Daoi, and it costs up to 1000 star coins a day. It would be better to summon Wang Daoi and let him report directly. After thinking about it, Zhao Chen suddenly realized that the reporting to the police plan provided by Qi Fimeng could not achieve his original intention of solving the problem and taking advantage of it, and it might even lose money. He hesitated for a while. He automatically ignored the option of letting Qi Fimeng take risks. After all, Wang Daoi might need to appear in the end. It's all about spending star coins, so why not let Wang Daoi do it from the beginning? At this time, as if he noticed that Zhao Chen was backing down, Qi Fimeng considered it and said, "In fact, I hope you can expose the cancer hidden in the Stone Buddha Temple and the Che family. If you think it's not worth it, I can give you some compensation." Zhao Chen looked her up and down in surprise when he heard that. Suddenly he reacted and asked, "You are actively dealing with the Che family not for revenge, but just to get rid of the Xinjiang Temple's hidden man inhuman, right? You deliberately hid in this space filled with the power of the goddess of light. You are not guarding against the Che family, but the members of the Xinjiang Temple." Qi Fimeng nodded and admitted readily, "That's right. I didn't actually intend to hide it from you, but you have always subjectively thought that I wanted to deal with Che Yugang. What are you trying to do?" Zhao Chen asked puzzledly. Qi Fimeng was silent for a few seconds before she slowly spoke. "The birth of Xinjiang Temple has some connection with Buddhism. As a disciple of Buddhism, I'm irreconcilable with Xinjiang Temple." At this point, she paused, a look of compassion appeared on her face, and continued, "Secondly, if the power of Xinjiang Temple hidden in the county city is not eliminated, the people will suffer sooner or later. I uphold the concept of great compassion and naturally cannot sit idly by." After she finished speaking, she looked at Zhao Chen with expectation and asked, "You will help me, right?" But as soon as the words fell, Qi Fimeng's face changed, and she lowered her head to apologize. "I'm sorry, I didn't control myself just now, and I shouldn't have used such a trick." Originally, Zhao Chen's heart softened a little when he was stared at by her pure eyes, but after Qi Fimeng apologized, he suddenly recalled his self-reflection the night before, and hurriedly concentrated and calmed down, frowning and asked, "You have a new state? And you haven't restrained your impatient temper like before? This state seems to have a strong tea flavor." "Yes. This is the reward for completing the previous task. Since it is not as obvious as the impatient state, I just noticed it. But it is indeed my own wish to deal with Xinjiang Temple." When Qi Fimeng said this, her expression unconsciously revealed a pitiful look, which made people feel pity at first sight. Seeing this, Zhao Chen immediately circulated his true energy, and while examining his heart, he said calmly, "Tell me about your compensation first." Chapter 75 Water and Moon accompany the 5 immortals. Fei Meng's schizophrenia-like state should be caused by the practice she is practicing. Great compassion and great mercy Avalokitesvara Hard Sutra. It is said that Avalokitesvara has 33 incarnations, each with different symbols. Is her current state the manifestation of the 33 incarnations in the stage of true ki and refining orifices? Fortunately, Fei Meng can still stick to her original heart and control the other personality states with her original heart. It is only occasionally out of control every time a new state is added. Compared with the 5 immortal spiritual ki, this great compassion and great mercy universal salvation ki has a variety of functions, but each one seems to be unspecialized, and it is much more dangerous to practice. When Zhao Chen was thinking, Qi Fimeng was relieved to see that he was not angry because of her trickery. She didn't want to leave a bad impression on Zhao Chen. After organizing her sentences a little, Qi Fimeng said, "I can take out a book that directly points to the Gangsha realm as a reward for Uncle Wang's action. A book in the Gangsha realm? That should be worth at least 2 or 3,000 star coins, right? If so, Wang Daoi can indeed deliver a message." After all, no matter how much I value profit, I still have a chivalrous heart. Thinking so in his heart, Zhao Chen asked curiously on the surface, what kind of skills? It is the fundamental skills of one of the ancient Buddhist sects, the Water Moon Guanyin Sutra. This Water Moon Temple is also the dojo of Guanyin Bodhisattva, but it has long been in decline and the skills are scattered. And the Water Moon Guanyin Sutra in my hand is just a fragment, which can be cultivated into the 3 spells of Water Mirror Technique, Water Moon Illusionary Technique and Lotus Boat Green Shadow. It can theoretically be cultivated into the Water Moon Temple Sect's Great Supernatural Power Mirror Flower Water Moon. It's a pity that the part 1 does not have the final method of combining the Gangsha into one to form a supernatural power. Qi Meng said with some regret at the end of the introduction. Water Moon Temple method? I just got the Water Moon Illusionary Body method from my master, and I haven't even started yet, and there is a subsequent skill? Is it too much fate? In addition, Shuayu Temple is the dojo of Guanyin Bodhisattva, and I have already established a certain connection with that Bodhisattva picture. Is this the involvement of fate? As his thoughts turned, Zhao Chen thought of the Dairi Xingcha that he had a close relationship with, and muttered in his heart, maybe it's not a bad thing. Squinting his eyes, although he had long been inclined to agree, Zhao Chen still pretended to think for a while, and after seeing that Miss Qi really would not raise the price, he nodded and said, okay, I will let Wang Dazar go to the Li family's residence after I return to the city. Since I chose to let Wang Daoyi report to the authorities, it would be better to go directly to King Lion Sword Li Fuan, which would attract more attention. Hearing this, Qi Meng smiled like a flower, took out a stack of paper from the pile of sundries beside the bed, and began to copy the secret book. Looking at her beautiful profile, thinking of her profound knowledge in all aspects, Zhao Chen felt that this girl was full of mysteries and attracted people to explore. After a while, Qi Meng put down his pen, checked it again, and then handed the incomplete copy of the Water Moon Guanyin Sutra to Zhao Chen. Zhao Chen was not polite, and took it, and read it directly. Speaking of which, this was the first time he had seen a martial arts method that directly pointed to the level of Gangsha. Although Wang Daoyi secretly transmitted wine-slashing 9 swords true art and Yan Hangsha's Red Emperor Yangyu and sword art were exchanged in Xingcha, the prices were very high, and it was too extravagant to use them as a reference. Soon, he was immersed in the mystery of this martial arts method. This Water Moon Guanyin Sutra is a martial arts method of the ancient major sect Water Moon Temple. Although it is severely incomplete, it is also all-encompassing and worthy of the appearance of a true transmission. This sutra starts with the cultivation of true Qi. The entry is a set of Water Moon illusionary body that integrates footwork, body techniques, and leg techniques, as well as mirror flower Water Moon reflection mysterious record for cultivating Water Moon true Qi. Moreover, the Water Moon illusionary body recorded here is much more complete than the one given by the master. After comparing it, his understanding of this set of body skills immediately improved to a higher level. After that, when the Water Moon Qi is fully developed, the practitioner can practice the Water Moon Guanyin diagram and visualize the true form of Water Moon Guanyin, so as to strengthen the soul and open the acupoints all over the body at one stroke, to build the inner world. When the 9 acupoints are opened, and the soul is strong enough to condense into spiritual consciousness, the spirit platform can be built, the bridge between heaven and earth can be built, the vitality of heaven and earth can be drawn into the body, and combined with the true Qi of the body, to cultivate the true essence of mana. The mana cultivated by the Water Moon Guanyin Sutra is not inferior to the sword Qi of the Red Emperor after dual cultivation with Zhao Chen, and it is a perfect match with the 3 spells recorded in the sutra. In addition, there are 2 magic tools, the Great Light Divine Staff and the Red Moon Wheel. Although they are generally compatible with the magic power of Water Moon, it is not recommended to be refined into the life magic tool, but they are also powerful, and can be regarded as quite good tools for protecting the way. Well, according to the scriptures, there are 9 turns of mana. After the 9 turns, you need to find the corresponding Gangsha Qi, practice the life spell, and enter the Gangsha realm. But Zhao Chen knows that the 2 realms of mana and Gangsha are just like the true Qi in the refining of the orifices. In fact, there is no clear boundary. While practicing mana, It is completely possible to condense Gangsha and practice life spells at the same time. With each additional turn of mana, you can practice one more Yinsha spell and one Yang Gang spell. For example, Yan Hongxia now has 3 turns of mana and has 5 life spells: the Red Emperor Yang Yuan Sword Key, the Cloud Feather Clothes, the Blue Mist Cloud Sky Escape, the Zaya Guan Net, and the Seeking Breath spell, with only 1 vacant. So in theory, every cultivator in the Gangsha realm can only practice 9 Yinsha at most, and 9 Yang Gang for a total of 18 spells. But the cultivation methods of life spells are precious. It is actually difficult for casual cultivators and cultivators from small sects to get 18 spells, so they always practice whatever they get, which often leads to their spell combinations being extremely unreasonable and conflicting, and they have no hope of supernatural powers for life. Because the magical power is a combination of the innate magic and one's own basic magic power, there are limited positions for the 18 innate magics. The casual cultivators who have no inheritance randomly cultivate various magics. Even if they cultivate to the peak of Gangsha, they are not systematic and cannot even combine a 9th grade magical power. Naturally, they will have no hope of promotion in their lifetime. And how to combine magic to transform into magical power is the core secret of major sects and families. Unfortunately, this Water Moon Guanyin Sutra is also incomplete at the most critical point, and there is no method to form the Mirror Flower Water Moon magical power. As for how to practice after the magical power realm, there is even less. After closing the Water Moon Guanyin Sutra, Zhao Chen took the time to go to the Dairi Xingcha to take a look at its recycling price, and found that it was indeed higher than the Red Emperor Yang Yuan Sword Art, with a high price of 3,900 star coins. Feli Meng, your award is a bit high. Zhao Chen looked at Qi Feli Meng beside the bed and said so. You saved me before, so this is not much. At this point, she seemed to remember something, and suddenly covered her mouth and laughed. Besides, if I hadn't woken up in time and suppressed that abnormal state, I would have almost given myself as a reward to you. In comparison, don't you feel a little bit at a disadvantage? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.